All right, the YouTube intros, blah blah blah. We're here, and it's the intro is over, and we're getting into it already because that's just how cool we are, and we're
So quick,
the best
so quick.
YouTubers. Because a lot of YouTubers they just fuck around and try to pad out the video, the runtime of it to get like the. I think that's still a thing, like the minimum ad revenue. Like people are motivated to get their video past 10 minutes. Like that was a
Right.
thing maybe 10 years ago. I think it's still a thing.
There still is, yeah. You have to, get the audience retention
Hmm.
in the first. It's like 30 seconds now, isn't there? Like 1 minute. I don't know. Mr. Beast has cooked YouTube, but that's a discussion for
I know,
another day.
yeah, I know. There's the one thing where it's like you can't cuss within the first 30 seconds, or
Right.
else that's bad
Yeah.
for some reason.
Bad for advertisers.
Yeah, but we're
Gotta play
not
the game.
involved in any of that
No,
shit,
of course not.
so who cares? But we'll start with the films for the pods,
Indeed.
and I'll start us off in tradition. And I saw an oldie somewhat recently from 1931.
Wow.
That being
Okay.
City
Okay.
Lights, which I think you've seen. Uh,
Yes.
this is a Charlie Chaplin thing, and he's a name that people have heard about in terms of like films from that era. He's probably
Hmm.
one of the more known directors, but also actors. And this film, it's a black and white silent film, and I really did not expect much of anything from this because just like we sort of talked about it when you had watched The Wizard of Oz,
Mm.
and like it's hard to like compare even that movie to like the standards of the now. You know what I mean? Like because
Yeah.
just like the definition of a movie has shifted so much over time. But like City Lights, I think honestly, it really, really, really holds up. Like it's really cool and funny, and also somehow endearing and emotional, despite the fact that like there's very little dialogue. You know what I mean? Like it does that silent film thing where it's like the people blah 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 look like they're speaking, but they're not actually probably really saying words. They're just sort of saying gibberish, and then it cuts to like the whatever the screen where it's like here are the words that they're saying.
Yeah. It's almost
The
like a
the
title
card.
card, but not quite.
Yeah, exactly.
Dialogue
Um,
cards,
and
maybe.
that doesn't happen like all the time that they speak, but like the times where that doesn't happen, you could like reasonably infer like the sort of stuff that they are saying to like other characters in this. Which I mean I don't know. It kind of just goes to show maybe how pointless a lot of the film dialogue even is. If someone like this can get away with uh, not much of that. Um, but obviously, the heart of it, I guess, is on the goofs and the stunts and the physical comedy of it because it is so like there's no sound at all. So I mean, all it is really visuals. And there's an orchestrated score accompanying it because I think back in the day there was like that you would go to the theater and the actual film itself wouldn't have any sound, but there would be like a band or like orchestra there, and they would like do sounds synced with the movie. I think is what happened
Hmm.
like 90 years ago or whatever. I think is what happened. So to simulate that at home in the modern day, they just have like that orchestrated soundtrack to go alongside it. And yeah, I don't know. I didn't expect much, but I actually really got a super positive experience out of this one, and I know you did also.
Oh yeah, I know. I've now watched like his, I guess, biggest three movies,
Yeah, this was
and
the only
they've
one
all
of
been
them I've
great.
seen. Yeah.
You know, I feel like everyone knows Charlie Chaplin. He's a household name, especially
Hmm.
just because how much he's influenced. But really, beyond the kind of slapstick humor and very like exaggerated, cartoony way of acting, which was par for the course. The actual storytelling, like the narrative, and as you said, it's just like a lot more mature than you might expect, given your preconceptions of Charlie
No,
Chaplin.
yeah, I
It's
like
actually
felt
just like it's
things.
a yeah,
I like
it's just
felt
a great
emotions. I was like,
movie.
damn, that went hard by the
Yep.
end.
Yeah. It's like it's a timeless kind of story. It's not really just a period piece, although it obviously is silent film
Hmm.
and black and white and all that.
Yeah.
But he got to something deeper than that, and that's just part of the reason why he is such a celebrated and iconic character and director and actor and all that, writer, stuntman. He
Yeah.
really did wear many, many hats.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing more stuff from him.
Yeah, I mean, he has so many. Like,
No, I know.
I've only
There's
watched
a
like
shit ton.
his biggest ones, but he has quite the filmography. On my end, though, I didn't really watch a whole ton this month, but I
Damn.
did watch some impactful ones, and
Okay.
it's kind of like a cohesive media experience for me this month, at least in according with my the games that I've played. But not to get ahead of myself, I was still finishing up watching through all of David Lynch's discography,
Oh, okay.
and I think I left off
His discography.
watching,
What shit did he
yeah, his
produce?
filmography,
Ooh.
discog.
Yeah,
Well, he
yeah.
has. He's worked with who is the Twin Peaks, and
I don't know who made that soundtrack.
I forget. It's an Italian man who does fantastic ambient work. David Lynch, he's like an artist that has done his own music as well as his own art, as well as writing and all that. But Wild at Heart was the one that I watched first this month, and it's a really fun one. I have heard interesting things about it. It's the one with Nicolas Cage and Laura Dern, and it seems almost too energetic and in your face for Lynch. But as you kind of watch through the film, it really is a Lynch film through and through. Just that humor and kind of brutal, violent underside to a lot of what he loves to depict in just American life and suburbia and youth freedom and all that. It's a strange one amongst his. I had seen a lot from Willem Dafoe's Bobby Peru character. I had
It's iconic in this
It's
one.
a very with the the teeth and
No, I
the
know.
gums. He definitely steals the scenes he's in. But Nicolas Cage and Laura Dern are also fantastic.
No, yeah.
It's such a funny. It's way funnier than I think any of his other movies, and it doesn't lose sight of real like impactful emotional moments, especially towards the end. It's essentially just like a road trip towards hell almost, but also with like a happy ending because David Lynch kind of likes having things optimistic in the weirdest sense of the phrase. Like, but yeah, I think. Have you watched Wild at Heart?
Yeah, I've seen all of his stuff except for Elephant Man, I think.
Okay. I'll talk about that next. But I definitely did enjoy Wild at Heart more than I thought I might have.
Yeah, I mean, it's in the title.
honestly-
It's wild. It's out there.
It is very strange. But so is the rest of his stuff,
Yeah, to be
as we
fair.
will definitely get into when I talk about Inland Empire. But what else have you been watching this month?
Oh, I checked out someone from our good friend Jacques Audiard, who was the dude who directed Amelia Perez, which I still have not seen, but you've seen that. And
I
in
have.
2018, he came out with this video this movie, not this video. I mean, it is a video technically, but it's more than that. Okay, that being The Sisters Brothers, and this is a Western starring John C. Reilly and Joaquin Phoenix. And it also has Jake Gyllenhaal and Riz Ahmed, who were both in fucking Nightcrawler together. So that's interesting. And yeah, it's a Western that like I went into this like knowing the discussion surrounding Amelia Perez, which we talked about a little bit last time. And the idea that like he was a French director coming into this like essentially new culture to him. And it's sort of treating it like, I mean, I don't know, not that he necessarily didn't give a shit, but like that he desired to depict things in his own way, is how you would say that optimistically or positively. And like and not necessarily like in the most realistic fashion of like doing research and like talking to people or like in this context for this film, historians. or whatnot. But for Emilia Perez, like it wasn't trying to show the authentic either trans or Hispanic experience, and that's really the main reason why that got so much backlash when it was released to the public, and then when it was nominated for a bunch of Academy Award stuff. And I get very, very similar vibes to The Sisters Brothers, where it's a Western, but it's not at all trying to necessarily be that like authentic Western experience. Like they're dressed up in costumes, and the sets resemble other sets from Western films, but like the exact characters that they are portraying, and like even like their accents or voices, like Jake Gyllenhaal does a little bit. He does a bit of an accent like 90% of the time, but then some of the times it's like it's almost just like his normal voice, and then everybody else it's just their normal modern voice. And I didn't pay much. I can't remember the exact language of it, if it's trying to be old timey or if it's like if they're just talking like it's the modern day, sort of just using like whatever old timey terms every once in a while. I forget, but like that like feeling of that, he was taking this idea of a film set in America in the past, in the 1800s, and just creating a story from that rather than trying to create like here's another Western film. And like really the main reason why this one I guess succeeds while Emilia Perez fails is a matter of like how much it will offend the people, because there's not gonna really be like, I mean, if they are like the exact same in terms of quality, Emilia Perez and the Sisters Brothers, like if they're somehow the same quality, which again I haven't seen that other film, but if I had to guess, I would say probably the Sisters Brothers is better as a film than Emilia Perez. But if they were the exact same in quality, it would just be a matter of like the issues that Emilia Perez is bringing up is more like prevalent to the modern day than the Sisters Brothers. Like I can't imagine many people getting offended over like, this isn't how my cowboys are supposed to behave, or like stuff like that. So I'd say that also plays a big deal into the, I guess, separation of the two of these films. But yeah, like separated from that, I do think this is a really good film, and it creates a unique film that is of the Western genre, because it is so separated from like the other things from like the 60s or whatever, like The Searchers and stuff like that. And yeah, it's just a cool modern Western that I would recommend to people.
Yeah, I've been meaning to check it out just because I know, Jacques Audiard is like, he has good movies under his belt. People like him to some extent, beyond whatever happened with Emilia Perez.
Right.
But I'm very much interested to hear once you eventually watch Emilia Perez, or if I watch The Sister Brothers,
true.
and see how, because you do have to definitely compare the movies just against each other quality-wise, like regardless of, the inaccuracy or creative liberties taken with the source material.
They're just similar.
Do they stand
way.
up?
Yeah.
I guess we'll have to figure out once we go through his entire filmography.
Which isn't too big. He's only done like 3 major films or something.
Yeah.
Or I guess he's done a couple. He's done like 6. I don't know.
We could do it though.
That shit's easy. That's 6 days.
Continuing on my David Lynch watching spree, I checked out The Elephant Man, which you haven't, but I would recommend. It is another just really good one. It's probably his most straightforward and most coherent narrative. It's just, the kind of based on a true story of a man with terrible, disformities, and he is kind of cared for by a Victorian surgeon way back when. And it's about, finding humanity in the grotesque, which is a very David Lynch kind of theme to explore. There's not as much of his weird abstract stuff, but it is still there. I think this and A Short Story are probably his most engaging ones. Not engaging, I would say, or straight story. Sorry,
Right.
but they are his most easy to follow and less abstract, which I still appreciate. Although I do really love Lynch when he's as like out there as he can get. I think The Elephant Man in particular did a really good job of just delivering a really earnest story. Very tight, great dialogue, great acting from both Anthony Hopkins and John Hurt, who must have worn like 50 pounds of prosthetics, and I can't imagine getting in and out of that in 1980 when it first came out. But yeah, it's just a really solid movie, executed well throughout, good soundtrack. It's just like I can see how Lynch kind of burst onto the scene with this and kind of got a ton of attention, because it's definitely, between Eraserhead and The Elephant Man, it kind of showed the world that he could do both, be really like weird and also, you know, earnest and straightforward. Although it seems like he didn't really like where that attention got him, because I think he went on to do Dune after this, and then seems like he got a little burned by the Hollywood machine. But he still is, you know, wildly celebrated and went on to do a ton of fantastic other movies. So I'm not mad about how everything turned out for him. But yeah, would recommend you finish off the rest of his
I'll
movies
eventually get to it. There's very few directors who have actually seen all of their major motion pictures. I think the only one is like Tarantino, and maybe I think Kubrick. I've seen all their stuff, but I've only like seen all of them, all of the stuff from them like pretty recently. So I try to like space it out for as much as I can, I guess.
Yeah, I don't really usually go through an artist's kind of filmography like I have done with Lynch. I think he might be my only one. But it's interesting just because of how much his work has influenced a ton of other media that I really love. And so familiarizing myself with his stuff, not to mention I was already a fan, but kind of getting to have a deeper appreciation. It's a fun experience going through all of them.
Next up for me is a film called Jason and the Argonauts. And this is one sort of known for its stop motion effects from back in whenever this was made, the 1963. So it's pretty old. It's before, you know, the digital effects of the now. And yeah, it's a film that would probably never get made in the modern day because of that major reason, because it's this blend of like, you know, real life people going up against these stop motion monsters. And honestly, it's like incredibly well handled. It's like sort of amazing. Where like I mean, it's most known for this like skeleton fight that happens at the end, where this dude like raises up a bunch of skeleton warrior dudes and they fight against the protagonist group. And like it just like everything lines up so well and like just looks so perfect. Like every sword clash and like kick and like everything. Honestly, it surprised me how well this was. And there's like another part where there's like this giant ass statue, and like the way it moves and like the sound and everything, it just like it feels so powerful, even though like I wouldn't say that it looks fake, but it looks I would say that it's like look enhances the film and like the shit that is happening, even if like you could make arguments that like some sort of CGI thing may look more realistic in some ways, maybe somehow. But I think either way, this is it really sort of just made the film, because like without it, it's like okay, it's like this, I don't know, it's like this Greek thing. Hercules is there, but he's like a side character for some reason. I don't know, it's all right, it's nice. But it's the real heart of it is that stop motion stuff. and it just slaps sort of because of that reason. So it's a good time.
How did they go about doing it? Did they splice together footage
Oh, I
of
have no
like
idea.
stop motion footage?
I didn't look
Or
into
did
it.
they have that?
It's they just I assume they filmed it. The because what I want to guess is what happened is like something that sometimes modern films do, but it's like handled way worse. And it's like the on set, it's just like, okay, try to smack here, and then you get hit there, and then in post they'll totally fix it up or something. Like if I had to guess, that's I don't know how else it would be handled because I don't know how movies work. I just
Especially
watched them.
back
I don't
in
know. I don't. I don't work
1963.
on them. No, yeah, I know.
Yeah,
But like, if that is how it is, like, regardless of whether it's like that or it is like really, really planned out, and like the stop motion people beforehand, like help work with like how the scene will turn out. Like either way between those two, it's super impressive what they were able to pull off with this. So it's cool.
might have to check it out then.
Yes, sir.
What made you check it out?
I had just heard of it
Okay.
a couple of years ago. Yeah, there were just like scenes and like clips of like the fucking skeleton army fighting, and I'm like, oh, that's cool.
The stop motion stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll have to check it out for that then. As my last entry into the David Lynch catalog, I watched Inland Empire, which was a bit of a intimidating watch for me because it's like 3 hours. It's David Lynch at his weirdest. It's either this or Inland Empire are his scariest movies. Probably this one. Inland Empire is
maybe.
Or Lost Highway. But Inland Empire it's so strange. Like there is very, very little of a narrative to guide you and like hold on to. There are kind of fragments of like cohesive moments, but they're spread out and recontextualized throughout the entire story. So it is it's definitely his weirdest movie, I think. I want to say filmed it completely out of order and just like had no story in mind when he started filming, and just like filmed until it felt right. Okay. Which is such an interesting way to do it. And this is kind of more well known for being his first and only foray into digital filmmaking, and just using like it must have been like a cheap ass camcorder like video. Because it looks
like
rough.
Visually it looks cheap.
It's super lo-fi, and I think it definitely does contribute to the vibes of the movie and the overall atmosphere, just because of how lo-fi it is, which the entire movie feels like that. It's fragmented. It feels like it's distorted in ways, and just like falling apart. It's definitely his. It's the hardest to figure out, even like what the themes are. His use of iconic symbolism that he uses throughout the rest of his movies, being that like doppelgangers or like television, static, stuff like that. It's all here. It's just utilized in a much weirder and, like I said, more fragmented way. What did you think of this one when you watched it?
Yeah, it was weird and out there. And yeah, it was like it leaned a little bit too heavily into the abstract for me, where like I need that good mix of like, I think like Mulholland Drive hits the perfect balance for me of like, here's real things that are happening, and then here's a bunch of weird shit, Yeah. And Lost Highway does like a decent job at that also, I feel like. And yeah, Inland Empire, it's like it's also pretty long. It's like 2.5 hours or something.
Yeah.
Or is it longer?
Yeah, 3 hours total.
3 hours. Yeah, and it's still like a good time overall. It's just like it does feel because that's the thing with it. You could say that like, oh, the fact that it's too long, that's actually significant, and that's there's something you could interpret with that, with the something about the characters there, because there's like, because it's so abstract, there's just any number of directions you could
Interpretations,
make, various interpretations for. And like that's sort of true for like his other stuff. It's just, I guess, amped up here. But like, to me, the way I see it, it's just there's slightly less going on than some of his other ones. I don't think this one is bad at all. I still really like this one. It's just I wasn't as nearly drawn to it as I was his other ones, but I still really like it overall.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. It feels like a movie that you kind of just have to surrender yourself to, for lack of a better word, because it seems like Lynch has always been trying to push that boundary of having just like such a cinematic experience as to lose yourself in and not worry about what means what, just like kind of delve into the subconscious as he is or was known to do. And Inland Empire has maybe hit the closest he's done to really representing his love of transcendentalism into film form, whether that be like super successful as a movie. I don't know about that. I think I agree. It's one of the harder ones I've had to watch from him. But it is, just a work of art in the grandest sense of the term. And, still glad I watched it.
Yeah. It's definitely very unsettling. Like it maybe is his most in that way.
Yeah. There's not a lot to kind of ground you, and therefore like the entire movie is just like weird, kind of off-putting and a little terrifying.
Yeah. There's that rabbit segment in this, which like I don't even know what the fuck that was.
I know, exactly. And that's just like,
I don't know if that's different from he has like a separate short film from 2002 just called Rabbits. I don't know if that's different. This one's 43 minutes, so I would assume that is, unless the sum total of every rabbit segment from the film add up to 43 minutes, but I doubt it. So.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think there's probably elements.
It's like an extended version of the segment from Inland Empire.
Which is so strange, because like in Inland Empire, it is like a fairly important aspect of it. The rabbits, whenever they show up, like it's so strange and weird when they do. But the ending is very like kind of tied into the world of the rabbits. But I guess I'll have to watch that short film then to really
get the true story,
dive deep into the lore.
It could just not relate at all and just use like the same little set and miniature dudes.
I think they have the same voice actors.
Okay.
Because
I would assume they would relate.
Naomi
if
Watts'
I had to guess, it's like an extended
voice.
version of like what like that like full segment was. Like if you don't separate it out into the 3 hours and like plop it in at random moments.
Rabbits was filmed in 2002, it seems like.
Oh, so yeah,
and
this one
was
came
2006.
out in 2006. So it could have been like a beta version of like what eventually he did with the concept in Inland Empire, I guess.
Just experimenting with filmmaking.
Which he has another like handful of short films, which I haven't checked out. There's the What Did Jack Do? And like, I don't know, he has other random stuff in here. I don't know what they are.
Yeah. I know.
I haven't seen that.
He's got a ton of stuff.
All right. So I've been talking about good movies too much, so I got to talk about one that pissed me off, and it was 17 again. Is the film's name, and it's one that stars this dude Zac Efron, who people like, and I don't know. I guess over time he's done a wider array of roles or whatever. He was the Disney Channel kid. I guess he was most known for the High School Musical stuff. And I don't know, more recently he's done the Iron Claw, which I thought he was pretty good in that. So I hope that he continues to push the boundaries away from doing the same silly blah 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 stuff again. It's sort of like this one. This one, 17 again, it really sucked and I hated it. Matthew Perry was in this, and he was legitimately terrible. Like, it felt like he was just like trying to get a paycheck or whatever. Like, I like him in Friends and stuff. Like, he fit that role decently, I guess. But like, in this, he was just terrible. And like, the concept is that like there's this dude who is like is getting divorced from his wife, and his kids hate him or whatever, and he like had such a great cool high school life, and he's like, damn, my life sucks right now. And I forget how he even did it, but he becomes he like de-ages somehow.
He's 17 again,
and he is
I guess.
17 again. And like it like makes no sense like why he's
It's a very
suddenly
anime
like
plotline.
motivated to go back to high school, specifically at the school that his kids go to, but they don't know that it's him because he's just pretending to like.
Oh wait, what? He's not like
else.
he went back in time. He's just.
No, it's not. I thought it was going to be that he goes back in time, but no, it's just every like time.
Okay.
It just keeps going. He just is younger now.
So they just lost their.
Well, it makes no sense because it's like.
Yeah. Okay.
There's literally pictures of him in the school from like the basketball championship or whatever. And then he's just walk like from 1980 or whatever, and he's just like walking the same halls. It's like, come on, bro, what are you doing?
Is this Harry Potter?
It actually had the substance logic. You're not actually supposed to think about it in that way. It's not this literal world, guys. Okay, it's actually it's cinema. No, it fucking sucks. And it just like it reminds me of every like film that I hate like this, where it feels like that. It's perfectly reasonable and fine for characters in a story to resemble the author in some way, or like the characters to resemble people that the author knew, because like that's, I mean, really what fiction stems from real life stuff. And what makes voices unique is their own life experience, and they reflect that in whatever stories they portray. And I'm totally perfectly okay with that, so long as it's not bullshit like this, where it's just my life sucks right now and I wish I was in high school again because I was such a fucking badass. And I would totally do epic ponage to the bullies, and I would help my son pull girls, and I would get my daughter to stop dating this one dude. Whereas like the bully character is both bullying his son and also dating his daughter, so it's like a wombo combo of like, I take out this dude, my fucking life is set,
save my
and
family.
I'm free. Yeah, exactly. It's like what? And then there's like he's like, you know, in this high school body, and then his wife is like, he's like coming over to their house and he's like flirting with her or whatever in this like younger body, and she doesn't know that it's him, but he knows, and it's like this weird like what's happening now? You're just like trying to start some like fetish thing of like the fucking milfing out or whatever, but it's your wife, so it's totally okay, you know. But it's not. It's just weird. And so yeah, that's this
shit.
movie. It feels like it's written by like the like people who want that sort
Peaked
of
in high school.
yeah exactly.
It's
peaked
not
in high
great...
school, and it's like, yeah, like what the fuck are you doing? Like, rather than make a movie about that, like, why don't you just improve it? Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, you know, the male fantasy of the middle-aged male fantasy of wanting to go back to high school, but go to high school now and not back in time. What? That is a strange.
No, yeah, it's.
I feel
weird,
like it's
right?
usually
It's
go
weird,
back
right?
in time in this kind of
So
tropey
like
thing, but...
undo a certain action or to do something to begin with, where it's like, I didn't make out with this one chick on the ball or whatever. I needed to do that 40 years ago, but I didn't. But now I can because I'm back in time and I'm redoing it. But no, it's just I'm in the modern time, but I fucking like, I don't know.
Go to school with my kids. What? And their friends.
Yeah,
and like that. That's
it. He's also like, it's a really weird thing with the daughter also, where it's like he's like in class with her, and like he like gives off vibes that he's like flirting with her, but he's not. But and so she like misinterprets it and everything, and like great, really good comedy comes from that, definitely.
Yeah, love the miscommunication.
So it just it feels like every step of like, okay, now we're appealing to the people who are like, I wish in high school I got with the sexy MILF lady, and now I'm in the fetish where it's like I'm an old ass man in a child's body, and I'm having cool relations with the young chicks. It's like, just watch Oshinoko, dude. Just fucking. Just
it feels very much like an anime plotline for sure.
Watch Oshinoko, and then if you like the MILF stuff, watch 100 Girlfriends Who Really, 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 Really Love You. And you get everything in that.
What more could you ask for?
That
There was
one
no need
anime
to make
series
this
actually
one.
just kind of destroys like every like a hyper fixated heterosexual
Hmm.
male gaze thing. It just resolves all of it and just puts it everything in one. You like this type of girl, boom, they're in that. You know what I mean? And it's
Yeah, I
honestly
guess that's true. Yeah,
surprisingly sort of well handled for a harem. It doesn't make it a good show,
it's got
but
to be
for
self-aware
on
about
a
that,
this
right?
the
Yeah.
level of like the scale of harem anime, it's like a 10 out of 10 harem anime. For an actual anime, it's like half that or less.
Hmm. Hmm.
But yeah, that's 17 again. Another thing about like these films is the fucking poster. If they have a white background and just like 1 to 3 of the main characters on it, and then
Hmm.
either red and or black text for the film's title, and that's it, the movie is going to fucking suck 99% of the time.
There's
It's
never been a
it's
good one.
it's just going to be money laundering of like whoever the main 5 stars are and the
Mm.
director and the producers. And it's just going to be the worst thing ever, and it's going to rely on improv. The script's going to suck. The characters are going to suck. There's going to be some weird, random like fetish thing is going to be played off for comedy. And yeah, I just say stay clear from those. If I had to recommend stuff for normal people, but
Yeah,
for me,
that's a
I
great
see that and I'm
lesson.
like, oh,
Yeah,
that's the thing that I'll hate. I should look at
immediate
that.
red flag. I'll have to, be more aware of those kind of movies because I know
It's
the
a good
kind that you're talking
indication that
about,
that type
and
of
it is.
poster.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think you would be right. So I'll have to keep an eye on that. What did I watch next? I watched Jacob's Ladder,
Oh, okay.
which is 1990s. It's a pretty iconic horror movie,
Yeah.
starring Tim Robbins. Um, I watched it and I thought it was good. I
Yeah.
thought it was an interesting kind of psychological horror movie. It wasn't super, you know, excessive with the horror elements, which I'm always, partial towards. It wasn't too scary for me.
Hmm.
But this movie will tie heavily into some of the games that I played,
Oh.
that I will talk about, because this serves as an inspiration for a ton of
Yeah.
like contemporary horror, just with like the
I
you
can't
know
remember what
the
games, but I know you're definitely talking about referring to something because I've definitely watched a
yes,
YouTube video or a
yeah,
podcast or something where they mentioned that.
yeah, yeah. And the hospital from hell and the head twitching demons are all very evocative, but used sparingly, which I thought was good. It's definitely much more about the structure of the film, which helps to build that disjointed like world and mindset of the protagonist,
Hmm.
who is essentially a veteran from the Vietnam War who is suffering from some sort of strange hallucinations or flashbacks, PTSD possibly. It's a major crash out, but understandable one. And there are a ton of ways you could interpret the film, because the ending is, sets it one way, but the rest of the film leans another. A lot to read into. Maybe a little. It's hard to say cliche because like this is one of the first movies that were like doing these kinds of things, but it's not a very surprising film. Whether that be because it became so influential that many of the films that I've watched now, uh, you know, echo certain plot points, or there's only so much you could do with this kind of story just through like 2 hours of runtime.
Hmm.
But I thought it was a pretty good movie. Thought I enjoyed it, which I haven't been known to love horror movies, but
Ooh.
when they're done well, and they have like an interesting kind of thing to appreciate,
Hmm.
um, I'll give it a watch.
Yeah. When I given this one, I just pulled it up and right now I gave it a 5 out of 10 for some reason.
Hmm.
I changed it to a 6 just now. I think the reason why I gave it a 5 was because like I saw this. relatively early on to my movie phase of my
Mm-hmm.
life, which I'm currently still living, I guess. Because it was on a Sardonicast episode, so I was like watching a bunch of those, and at the
Catching
same
up,
time,
yeah.
I was watching sort of banger after banger of films. So
Hmm.
like seeing Jacob's Ladder, like after all of like the greatest movies ever or
Hmm.
whatever, is kind of like, what is this mid ass
I can't.
shit,
What the
But
hell?
it's probably decent. It's probably a decent good time. So
Yeah,
I changed
I
it to
think
a
it's
six now.
executed fairly well.
Hmm.
The actual structure of the movie is so interesting and very immersive because it keeps you second guessing and very confused and off kilter, which is exactly the mindset of the main character. So you get to sympathize with him a lot, and the things that he's going through is you know horrifying and tragic, and it does the job of what a horror movie is supposed to do.
Hmm.
So props for that.
Yeah, I'll probably revisit it again at some point. I don't know when.
Yeah, I definitely am glad I watched it. I would be interested to see if I had watched it before getting into, the stuff that I will talk about in our video game section.
Right.
But because I watched it after I'd already played those, I had maybe a new, a newfound sense of appreciation for it, just because of, I like the things that it's influenced.
Yeah, for sure. Um, Next up for me, I got this one called Mishima, A Life in Four
Mm.
Chapters. And this one absolutely banged. This one is directed by this dude Paul Schrader, who is an English speaker, and it's about this Japanese author from way back when, from like I don't know, he was around 50 years
The
ago or some shit is when
70s,
the
yeah.
events are taking place. Um, and yeah, it's directed by this dude speaking English. All the characters are Japanese, portrayed by Japanese actors, and they're speaking Japanese. And like, I don't know, that's a pretty impressive thing to direct and lead a film that is in a different language from the one that you speak. I don't know if he learned any Japanese. I assume not. I assumed there was either translators or the people there, the Japanese actors, sort of knew English because I don't know if you're an actor who is working with American people, you probably know a little bit of English, maybe, if I had to guess. Um, but I don't know. It's cool how it was able to, I think, work out overall. Obviously, I think it's pretty hard to tell, at least for me, like good versus bad acting when it's done with a foreign voice. Um, Usually, I could only really tell if it's like really really good or really really bad, because it's a matter of like hearing like the exact like how things should be said, and then also it's a cultural thing too, like of body language and stuff like that, and like knowing what is normal and what is like, okay, this is too much, this is too little, and like stuff like that. Like it's sort of hard to tell that kind of stuff with foreign things. So I think usually most people in general, even if they may not actively be thinking that, they still may be like more acceptable of what may be considered to be bad acting according to people natively from the country or who know the language, um, which leads to some foreign films maybe getting away with certain things like that with what would be considered to be poor acting, but like foreigners, we can't really tell, or I can't really tell, type of stuff. So I couldn't tell you too much for this one, Mishima, if it was acting wise the best or the worst. Like I have no idea, but I do know that it slapped and it was really cool, and it's just such a unique film, right? Because when you experience a story and then you go and research things about the author in real life, and you like, especially if you experience like multiple sort of stories from them. I mean, what I was saying earlier about 17 again, what I was complaining about in that, but like I think is cool, or it's like a theme that's cool reflected in this that you feel in other media, where it's like you get that understanding of the author through their works, right? By like watching all these David Lynch films, you get like a better understanding of who he is, and it might seem like is this daunting negative dude, but if you see like at the end of a lot of his movies, if they have this more positive outlook, then maybe that forms a better idea of the kind of person he is, I guess. And this one explores it directly in the film, where it's about this Japanese author who, I don't know, he wrote a handful of novels, and it's this really interesting thing where it flashes between his life and like short adaptations of his novels, and it's really really interesting because he also does the thing that a lot of authors do, where it's his main characters sort of feel like almost like variations of himself to a certain extent, or at least that's how I was looking at it as. And yeah, it's weird and it's interesting, and it's like it doesn't necessarily glorify him either, because he's essentially he's essentially a terrorist, I guess. It's comparable to like if like in the 1920s or something there was a like Confederate author dude or something, you know what I mean? Like he's behind in the times. He's still into like Imperial Japan post World War II, trying to like hold on to that, the ideals of that, in like a somewhat honorable way, sort of to a certain extent, but then not really, because he does do some not so great things in this, and like that's the thing. It like depicts him in like not a glorified fashion at all, but it's still like a pretty cool examination of the person and the characters behind the person, and yeah, it's just really well handled, and it's super unique, I think.
Yeah, fully, wholeheartedly agree. Paul Schrader is such an interesting voice in, cinema.
Yeah.
Known for writing a bunch of great films like Taxi Driver, and then he has his own films that he's directed, which I've only watched two of them, Mishima and First Reform, but he had, you can, like you were saying, you can definitely pick up on like the nuance behind the director just through watching his films, kind of the themes that he likes toying around with, and yeah, this movie is such an interesting examination of like the artist and the art, and like you said, the self-insertion of the artist within their own art, and how it serves to, it's very heady and artsy, but also just really beautiful, like super beautiful cinematography, and the set design.
Yeah, I was going to say the sets, because they go back and forth between the real life and the fiction, and that's reflected visually with a lot of the fictional things. That have like these really cool, well laid out sets with just like they're basically just like small rooms with like just complete blackness surrounding them. And then like some of the in person or some of the real life stuff is like in black and white when it's older, and then eventually goes and becomes color. I want to say to reflect like TV getting color, or like films getting color. I don't know. Yeah. For like the times in his life that was like before 1960, whatever, where it was like
a ton of
black and white there.
Interesting choices. Yeah, it's such an ambitious film.
Yeah.
To have those. The
ambitious and like super specific. Cause I don't know. I've never heard of this Japanese author, man. I assume in Japan he's somewhat well known.
Yeah. And he's become more well read like as the years have gone on. But I still have not read any of his stories, but I've been meaning to, especially because I am such a fan of this movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's very strange, very artsy, but also just like really well executed throughout the entire thing.
Yes, sir.
I've got one more movie to talk about.
That was my last
and
one.
Similarly to you, I had been watching too many good movies, and so I had to bring myself down a peg. Especially because it directly correlates to another game that I will talk about.
Oh, really?
And that being, I watched the movie Max Payne, 2008, with starring Mark Wahlberg and Mila Kunis. And let me just say that this shit was one of the worst things I've ever seen in my life. It was so fucking bad. It's not even funny. It is funny at moments because of how bad it is, but because of how much spoilers, I like the source material and the games. This thing was, it's really just a complete perversion on like every sense of the world of the things that I liked about the movie or the game. And I will leave it at that for now, and
Okay.
I will discuss it more as I talk
Okay.
about the games. But we'll just leave it there.
Yes, sir. All right. Yeah, nice. All right. So that'll take us away from the films. We're on the TV
Yes.
now, which I have one item. Do you have any?
Take it away. I got nothing.
All
So
right. So yeah, about I guess a year ago now, or a little bit more than that, I watched Star Trek the original series from like what was that, like the 68, around that time period. And more recently, I've been going through Star Trek: The Next Generations, which is the series that follows that. Like in between there, there's like the animated series, which is like just an animated version of the live action stuff. Like it's new story things or whatever from the original series. But like I tried watching that, and I was just like, like I'm good.
yeah.
But so far, like The Next Generation is a huge step up from the original series, where like the original series, it wasn't bad, it was decent overall, I would say. There's definitely some episodes that stand out more so than others. It's like fairly corny, I guess you could say, and like the overall crew like dynamics isn't super in depth. Really, the heart of it is just the three main characters, and then everyone else is kind of like unimportant. Meanwhile, in the Next Generation, it's cast of characters is much more well rounded, and the episodes in the original series were a little bit more repetitive with how like the conflicts they would encounter and the way in which they would resolve them. And so far, the Next Generations has been taking strides away from that. I'm only halfway through the first season, which this one has, I think, 5 seasons in total. The original just had 3, so it's a bit longer. But yeah, I don't have much else to say about it so far. I'm enjoying it a lot better, and my appreciation for it is only so high because I'd seen the original series. I know where this stuff is coming from on a production level, like when they're planning and writing all this stuff, like where it's coming from, and what they do with it is a pretty substantial improvement overall so far, and I expect it to continue to be that way. I don't think there's any like it like falls off or anything. So yeah, I expect good things from the rest of this, and I don't know, maybe I'll update it in the future if there's some major or minor things fluctuate. But for the most part, I'd say I'll probably be very slowly watching this over time, because I only get through like an episode or two a day on average, I guess, at this point. But yeah, it's just, and yeah, like even like the first episode is just like so much of a better, like it's like a real introduction to the like setup of all the characters and like why they're here, what's going on with everything. And there's like one very minor fan servicey moment that maybe people would complain about from like it's like fan service from like the first series or whatever, because there's like a character shows up for like 2 seconds, but it's like pretty short, and it's for what it is. I'd say it's well handled enough, I guess. So yeah, it's nice, and I'm glad I am getting through it at the current time.
Yeah, I watched some of this show way back when because my mom was a big fan.
Of which one?
This
Of
was
which
like
series?
the Next Generation.
Oh really?
Yeah, so I've watched a few of the story arcs, and it I never got around to watching the original series or any of the other following series, but I remember liking the Next Generation as I was watching it. It felt very similar to when I was watching through Doctor Who, that same kind of television arc of like storytelling, along with the sci-fi stuff that is really engaging for the most part. But yeah, I might have to kind of just looking at Star Trek and like
No,
the
I know
images from the Next Generation are
it's kind of a
super
monster
like,
and
yeah.
intimidating. I mean, you could probably honestly just get away watching the first two series, the original and then the Next Generation. I think those are both considered to be the best, which is not a good sign
Yeah,
for the future
it's
to
just
come.
like
Because I plan on maybe
it's
checking out some of the other ones in the future, like
mhm.
the Deep Space Nine. I think people also really like that one.
There's just so much content right
No, I
now
know.
because of it's become such a cultural touchstone.
Yeah,
So it's hard to tackle it, but
I'm getting
you
thing.
know,
It at a really
Godspeed.
at a
Yeah,
snail's
Godspeed.
pace. Who knows? Maybe eventually I'll be caught up in like a decade. It'll probably take more than that
Mhm.
at the rate I'm going, but we'll see.
But when it comes to video games
Oh
this
shit.
month, I played quite a few.
Okay.
So I don't know how
Yeah.
many you
I
played through.
I have two main ones and then a small gotcha update, which the people of
Okay.
course need to hear. They've been waiting for
They've been clamoring for it.
that.
Yeah.
You could start us off though.
All right. So I started off playing Nine Souls,
Oh yeah,
which is a game that just came out this year, I believe.
it's somewhat
It's
recent.
a
Yeah.
yeah,
It says
Metroidvania,
2024, but yeah.
a Metroidvania kind of Souls-like. I guess it was last year, yeah. And it's essentially, boilerplate if you took Hollow Knight and mixed it with Sekiro. Essentially, it's definitely needlessly reductive, but it was a very, very enjoyable game. Really tight, super tactile combat. The actual like gameplay becomes super satisfying as you become better with it. Very similar to Sekiro. And I loved the combat so much. The world itself is also really cool. It's I forget what kind of world it is. It's not cyberpunk. It's Talpunk. So essentially, if you took like Eastern Asian Tao folklore and then gave it super weird cyberpunk
Okay.
tech, sci-fi stuff. And it's a satisfying story. The bosses are great. The world is cool, and the Souls or the Metroidvania style of traversal and unlocking the world. It works well here, and justifies itself beyond just being lock off this area of the map until you are stronger. But just overall, really solid game. Not super long, which is nice. Doesn't overstay its welcome. Just really clean, great combat and gameplay to keep you, really engaged throughout. So, would recommend that.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, my brother really likes this game. I think because it's sort of like Hollow
Mhm.
Knight, I guess, to a certain extent. Just
Yeah,
tough
yeah.
Metroidvania gameplay, which I'm not super into Metroidvanias. I've given only a handful of them a
hmm
shot. But yeah, if I had to pick one, I'd probably do Hollow Knight, I guess, because I technically own that. I think I already mentioned that from
hmm
a Steam key that our mutual friend gave to me because no one else wanted it. And so I was just like, I'll take it. It's
Hey,
just been sitting
why
there on my
not?
Steam library ever since for like
Yeah,
six,
you
7 years
should,
or
cause
whatever.
you do have to get around to that. It's like
I'll hop on that
it's
shit eventually.
it's one of the best Metroidvanias that I've played for sure.
Okay.
And now that Silk Song is coming out,
Oh shit! Yeah,
allegedly,
that's right. That's coming out this year. Yeah. The most
yeah,
hyped up
supposedly
game of the year. Or, I don't know. Maybe.
of the past like fucking 8 years or something, 6 years. I
Yeah,
don't know.
it's been a
Six
minute.
years isn't even that long to wait for a game. Like
No, I
that,
know.
it's like for an indie company, people are up in arms about it taking six
Yeah.
years without any. It's like when you're talking about like the Fallout games or like Skyrim, it's like the Elder Scrolls. Like you're waiting for like 8 years,
Yeah, Elder
and
Scrolls
I know
6.
you're making.
How long has that been? Like over a dozen years.
Yeah, exactly.
for
So
that
you know
one.
what?
Like double the one.
And I understand that they're working on other games at the same
Yeah.
time,
No.
but
Yeah.
still,
Starfield or whatever.
yeah,
What that is.
exactly. Much better avenues of resources. Um,
Mhm.
but
How many games you got in
I
total?
a lot, but I'll block them together. So I guess I can talk about Blasphemous 2 because after playing Nine Souls, I wanted
Oh,
to,
okay.
I was feeling Metroidvania. and I had already played through Blasphemous 1,
Yeah.
and kind of I enjoyed it. I thought it was decent, if not something I would write home about necessarily. But I wanted to play through the second one because I heard it was better, and it is. It's just the first game, but better. It's still not one of my favorite Metroidvanias, just because of it feels a little more clunky and slower. But the art is still fantastic. The gameplay definitely got better with the introduction of different weapon systems. You have 3 weapons now that you can unlock and switch between, which makes it a lot more engaging than just using the same weapon over and over throughout the entire game.
Mm-hmm.
But I still had similar issues with the movement not feeling really how I would like a Metroidvania to play, and the platforming puzzles are just bullshit, and it's not at all. The game's designed to have platforming in it, but the platforming controls are not good enough to make the puzzles enjoyable or worth it or like satisfying to even get through.
So it's still sort of
just
annoying
more
like
of a
the
pain.
first one was.
Yeah. Still better, but similar issues, I would say.
Yeah, but is it still like the visuals mostly sort of carrying the experience?
The visuals carry. The story is also cool. It's just the world building in general. It's very evocative and immersive. It's just a bit of a shame that I think the gameplay is the weakest aspect. But not even all of the gameplay. Like I like the builds that you can get with there are these things like altar pieces that you can unlock through doing different quest lines or just finding them in the world, which you can mix and match to unlock additional like bonus kind of skills that you can use that completely change the build. And that was really cool. It's just not as polished as I would maybe want some of my top Metroidvania games of all times to be. So, it's a good one. Glad I played it. Just, take my recommendation with a grain of salt, I guess.
Yeah, I probably won't check out the Blasphemous stuff because
if you don't love Metroidvanias, then
like visually it looks cool, and like the visual themes of like the enemies and the bosses and like other NPCs and like even like the main character.
It's a good game.
Like it looks cool. But yeah, like if I'm already not super into Metroidvanias, I feel like this one would just annoy me more so than get me going in a positive way.
The Blasphemous games make for good games to like watch a YouTube essay about, like a video essay about like the lore that you missed or whatever. Which I don't mean to be insulting, but it the world is the best part about it.
Yeah, for sure. All right, I have gotcha games that I played still.
Hell yeah.
Because I know the people, they want us to talk about these for 4 more hours. I'll limit that though. Just this time. Maybe eventually we'll get into that more. But I have since last time I have dropped Zenless Zone Zero. I think for now done with that. I might return to it for various story or like event stuff if it like really interests me. But I think for the most part, like I'm good with it. It was nice. It was enjoyable. I enjoyed my time with it, and I got out before it pissed me off too much. Like all gacha games, they're repetitive to a certain extent, and this one just felt more strongly repetitive than Wuthering Waves, which I'm still going through. And like with each minor and major update to that game, it just like confirms for me more and more that it's just probably the best gacha game out there at the current time. Because like each character that comes out, there's a decent story surrounding them, and like in terms of gameplay, they're different enough from all the other characters who have came out, and they don't replace the existing ones. There's no what's the term, like unbalance in the what's the term that Fire Emblem Heroes suffers a lot from? The
power creep.
Power creep, thank you.
Yeah.
Because Zenless has suffered like a bit from that with this one character called Miyabi, who just completely breaks the game because she deals like way more damage than anybody else on the roster. which is interesting. It's an interesting decision to make to do that. And it's even interesting further to as a person who plays the games to defend that and be like, oh, it's in lore, she's the strongest, so it makes sense. Like, fuck off.
Yes, interesting.
Fuck off
Is a
with
good
that
way
bullshit.
to put it.
No, I know. And Wuthering Waves, I sort of talked about it last time, but it has much better balancing with the new characters that come out, and they like nobody so far has like truly replaced like an existing character from the past. And what they do is each time a new one comes out is they fill in just an entire new role to the roster. And it's like, this character was okay at this point in the game, but now like because of this character's introduction, they do well on this team. So like some of them even like make old characters better just by like existing and pairing sort of well with them. So it's interesting to see like stuff like that shift around. And stuff like that. And yeah, just like the updates, the events, there's like more varying gameplay, like final whatever gameplay things. Like compared to Zenless, where like the end game stuff is just like, even though there's like technically different modes, like they all really feel the same. But in Wuthering Waves, they feel a lot more varied. So yeah, I'm still playing it as of right now. I recently, because the first 2 times I was rolling for the limited 5-star, I won the 50-50, so I'm like, oh, that's cool. Most recently I lost it, but I still eventually got them. So I don't know if there's in either the next update or the one after, there's like a character coming out who I want. If I don't get them, I'll probably just stop. And if I do, I'll keep going for a little bit more. So that's really when it'll end. When I don't get a character that I want, I'll probably be like, okay, I'm good.
It's like your enjoyment is riding on that, which I think is, that's super respectable to have your boundaries with your gacha games. Because there's a lot of people who don't.
It's
we've talked about.
It's easy to go into that sunk cost fallacy type of shit, especially if you begin to spend money on it, and that slippery slope that entails that. Though to be honest, like for this thing, since I have already sunk so much time into it and sort of plan on continuing it, like it wouldn't make too much unsense for me to spend money on the thing. Like if this service that I'm experiencing for free, if I'm enjoying it and I've put all this time into it, it makes sense that a person making income at the current time would spend money on said thing.
Hey, so I've heard that excuse from many gacha gamblers.
But like, that's the excuse, right? But I would be in control of it totally, and I would not spend. I would never spend like hundreds or even like especially thousands. Like I would never spend more than like $20 maybe. But it would be like at some sort of ratio to the amount of time I put into it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like I would never put in more money than the amount of hours I put into it, probably, if I had to guess. For gacha games. For Team Fortress 2, it's different. I needed the hats and the weapons that tell me how many kills I have.
Yeah. It's a completely different story.
But yeah, like I'm enjoying it so far. We'll see if I have an update or not in the next month.
Well, cheers to you for continuing your gacha grind. On my end, You
were playing real video games.
Yeah, well, yes, I was. Real artistic statements. Because I checked out Tunic, which was a game that had been on my radar for a while. Just, saw it mentioned in a few YouTube videos talking positively about it. It came out a few years ago, 2022, and you play as a little fox in isometric kind of adventure fantasy. I still haven't played any of the early Zelda games, but a lot of people compare this game to it, just in that adventure style, exploring a land and like doing puzzles and fighting monsters in order to find unlock the keys to the kingdom, essentially. The cool gimmick about this one is that you find pieces of a tutorial manual, essentially, throughout the world, but the entirety of this manual is in a different language. So they have like it's essentially depicted to be like an early like 2000s to 90s gaming manual that you would get when you purchase like like a physical copy of a game,
Oh, okay.
like they used to do, when you had like a Wii game or a PlayStation or Xbox game. It would come with the paper inside with whatever, like maps or explanations of some of the game mechanics that you couldn't have put into a tutorial or for various reasons. And while this one doesn't have a physical one, it has the one that is actually in the world. And this is what you will use to guide you throughout the, like, where to go. Because essentially you are dropped into this world with no directive, no narrative to follow. You kind of get a few cutscenes that maybe give you an inkling of what you're supposed to be doing. But for the most part, you're picking up these pieces of paper that you'll find scattered throughout the entire world, and then using those to try and piece together like the mystery of what am I supposed to do, where am I supposed to go. There's a lot of depth to it. Like, it's a really engaging mechanic, because even though you can't understand the words that the manual is supposed to be teaching you, the images that are accompanied by the words, and there are like maps that you can kind of use to follow where you are, but it's all in worlds, in universe, and it makes it a really cool experience. The combat is Souls-like for some reason. There's like bonfires that you'll get to, and resources that you'll lose if you die. It's an interesting kind of way to design the game. I think it works for the most part. It's not really a super in-depth combat system, but you get your bombs, you get your magic wand or whatever to use, and a shield in order to deal with different combat encounters. But the main draw of this game is definitely that unique sense of immersion that comes with having no quest, or like there's no HUD, there's no anything. You're just completely blind going into a world that is full of mystery and intrigue, but it's up to you to figure it out yourself and put the pieces together yourself, which is a very satisfying game loop. And I would strongly recommend it. It's a fairly short one, depending on, I guess, how lost you get. There are definitely portions of the game that I had to look up online, because like you get in the ballpark of what you think you're supposed to be doing, but there are, like, after spending 10 minutes trying to bang your head up against a certain puzzle, it's worth it to just figure it out online. It's like, am I missing something? Way back when, I guess, before pre-internet, like, I guess you would have just had to fucking hunker down and figure out the game yourself. But luckily, this is a game that only harkens back to it, because it is a lot easier to complete now in contemporary gaming, I guess. But yeah, Tunic.
Yeah, I'd like to play this one. It's on my Steam wish list, I think. And yeah, it looks cool, because when it was first released or getting shown or whatever, it had all those 2D Zelda comparisons and stuff. And I forget who made it, but I did see more recently, maybe a few months ago, some YouTube video talking about it, and how it's like only on really the surface it's like Zelda, but in terms of actual gameplay and stuff, it's quite different. And I mean, just based on what you said, especially about like the way that combat works, that's like much different from the way Zelda does. I mean, it also has arrows and bombs, but like that the Souls twist to things is like not at all what Zelda does.
It's definitely a unique experience that I think takes inspiration in order to craft an experience, whether that be isometric exploration style like Zelda or whatever. But really, its core mechanic of mystery and like I guess puzzle solving and that unique kind of cryptography aspect to the manual that you get definitely sets it apart. And I guess I can't really speak to the comparisons to Zelda, but whenever I play through all of those 20 games, then
Hey, yo, you're in for a good time. Because that's like one of the most, I would say, consistent franchises out there.
Series.
Like the main games.
Yeah.
They're all really good.
No.
Like some people don't like Zelda 2. I haven't actually beaten that one or the original. I haven't beaten most of them, honestly.
But still, there's
I've
like
still played
six
most
that
of
are
them.
considered masterpieces, which is more than most franchises could ever ask for.
Yeah, I think Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask are absolute bangers. And then like even Skyward Sword, I want to revisit because I never fully went through that one. And that one was one where like people at the release were like, "This fucking sucks," and then people have sort of come around on it a little bit more.
And then
recently.
even the contemporary Zeldas are you have Breath of the Wild, which people love. I know people have like gone back to Twilight Princess and are celebrating it for what it was.
I like that one a lot. Also, I played it on the Wii U.
On the Wii.
Pad.
Yep.
That one was cool also. But yeah, it's all good, and it's a consistent series that you should get into, and I should play Tunic. That's what should happen.
I will. I will.
All right.
Once I get up to the, I feel like I need to build up stamina to go through like a game like a game franchise like that. I tried.
You don't need to tackle it all at once.
And it's like I know I shouldn't.
Because you don't even have to start with like the OG. You don't have to go.
I know. You could just play however you want.
Release date.
But
I mean, you could start with.
But it's so much cooler.
I would say like a good. Most people would probably say a good starting point is Link to the Past because that's like the first like really good one, which I haven't beaten that one. But more recently there was Link Between Worlds, which is sort of it's like a light remake of that, where it's like similar enough world and everything, but like enough different things going on that it stands on its own quite well. And I like that one a lot. A Link Between Worlds on the 3DS for 2D. And then, like Ocarina of Time is like just the standard 3D, or Twilight Princess, I'd say, are good entry points for like the 3D ones.
What else were you playing, though, besides your gacha game addiction?
Addiction? What do you mean? I've proven that it's totally normal and I'm okay about it. I played a handful of real games. I have 3 of them in total to go over. This first one, I won't say too much about it because we plan on covering it in more depth alongside its 2 predecessors, this one being Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater. This one is also a cool video game that is... It's really interesting as a sequel in a similar way that 2 is really interesting as a sequel, and like how it borrows things from the ones that came before it while also doing substantial things that are like pretty unique to this game, where like the second game had like hella enemies and a lot of narrow passageways and really required like precise moving. This one is a lot more open, and it has moments where you're in that like tight interior stuff, but for the most part it's like you're in the wilderness and stuff, and it's a lot more emphasis on like survival, which I didn't really care for too much, and like you would change like your camouflage to like blend in better, and like everything that like the previous game had, and sort of more, and it reflected that thing I think we had talked about at some point, where it's like he's leaning more and more into like a film like Kojima, where it's like the cutscenes are longer, the opening
they're like 15-minute cutscenes.
Everything is leading up to Death Stranding, where it's got that 2-hour whatever cutscene at the end of the game. I enjoyed this one. Again, I will not say if I liked it more or less or even the same as the other 2, but I did enjoy all of them, and I enjoyed their uniqueness from one another. Going into this series, sort of briefly binging a part of it, playing them not exactly back to back, but like within relative proximity in time to one another, and like being able to appreciate their differences and what each of them do right and slightly wrong sometimes, though. Really, there's not much bad about them for the most part, with varying degrees of that. But yeah, it was a cool game that we will talk more about at a later point in time.
Indeed, because there is a lot to dive into with those games.
No, I know.
So, we want to do those games justice in the discussion.
Yeah,
Speaking of like really iconic games, I finally got around to playing Silent Hill 2.
Oh shit!
Because the remake came out last year, which I had heard good things about, and so
Yeah,
I was torn between going through the remastered or should I play the original. I've heard both are good, and essentially what I found online is you could do either. So I decided to do both.
Oh shit!
I played through the remastered one first.
Shit.
Which I'm so curious to see if my perspective would have changed depending on which one I played first, because the remastered one I thought was fantastic. I thought both of these games are they're well lauded as masterpieces, and I think for good reason. I think each of them has maybe like just like enough to hold it back from like being a 10 out of 10 for me, but they're like easy 9s for me. For the remastered version that just came out in 2024, it's just much more immersive. The world, the design, the everything about modern day technology allows you to buy into it a lot more when the animations are better, the graphical fidelity of the environments and the world is much better. The way that they can use lighting to affect horror and sound, everything is just more polished. It's also more game. Like the remastered version has maybe twice as much content in the entire game, I would say. And I thought it did really well. Without being able to compare it, because I played the original after the remastered. When I was playing through the remastered one, I think it had a bit of a pacing problem towards the end where certain dungeons or like areas that you're kind of going through drag on a little long. But I think when I was playing the original, I blitzed past the entire game in like one afternoon because it is pretty short if you know what you're doing.
Okay.
So I think there is maybe ideally there would have been a middle ground between how much content is in the game, because I really do like all of the weird puzzles and riddles that you end up solving as you do in any like kind of survival horror, because it is such a weird kind of staple to have in that kind of game. It makes sense in Silent Hill because of how weird the actual world is and how dreamy and disconnected from reality it is. Getting to play these games, Silent Hill, is very, I guess, coincidental, because as I was watching a bunch of David Lynch films and Jacob's Ladder, the Silent Hill 2 is very directly inspired by both of those two, kind of media entities. And so it was really easy for me to buy into the world and that weird kind of off-kilter sense of reality. It's very strange. The characters are very like weird and a little spacey and not normal. Like I'm not playing this game in order to get realistic portrayals of whatever kind of nightmare these people are going through. 2, I think I was able to buy into the performances a lot better just because of
the sequel?
adventure. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry. In 2,
or I mean the remake.
Yeah.
Even I must let him.
I think the advancements in mocap and face capture technology has really made it a lot easier for the performances to do the heavy lifting of the cutscenes. I think the original has a very strange kind of charm to the animated videos
Yeah.
because it is very dated. Is like I think when did it come out? Was it 2001? Yeah. And the CG then it's very 2001
Yeah.
video games coded, but there's still, even because of how dated even despite its datingness, it's still such a cool game. Really, I think I would recommend both. I don't know if I would like which one to recommend.
No,
I
yeah.
think if you're looking for a whole, like, encapsulated experience, I would maybe say the remastered version. It's easier to get immersed into. The world is, the art design is fantastic. I thought like it's got that liminal quality, but also with like the graphical fidelity to really keep you engaged. And it's enough to be disturbing as a survival horror should be. Yeah, just really, glad I eventually checked these out because they're well worth all the praise that they get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's super cool that you checked out both of them, sort of like a true YouTuber, and you go at it, sort of trying to look at and compare and dissect both of them there. From my understanding, also the remake has better combat. There's not much of it, but like for what?
Yes, much better combat.
Yeah.
Much better.
It's like
I
sort of
actually
janky
like
and
surprisingly, yeah, it's definitely it's a survival horror game.
Right.
So like in the original one, like you're not really meant to attack every enemy. You can, but honestly, there's some really interesting narrative consequences to the way that you approach combat, because
really?
there are different endings for the games. And
Did you get different
it's
endings
not,
for between
yes,
them?
I did. Yeah. Because I after getting the first one in the remaster, I was like, oh, I didn't even know there were multiple endings.
Yeah,
and
I didn't know either.
I wasn't aware of how to get the other ones because it's not,
Super obvious.
it's not super yeah, exactly. Where like you do this quest line and then you get this end. It's more like cohesively, how did you play the game? What actions did you choose? Like how many enemies did you like? It keeps track of statistics behind the screen.
Yeah, not many games do
I
that anymore.
I know.
There's
It's
Metal Gear
strange.
Solid 3 sort of did that also with a certain segment in there. Which that one came out around the same time as this, a little bit after the original of Silent Hill 2. But yeah, it's not really something games do anymore, unfortunately.
No, I think it does. It adds an interesting aspect to game development that I wonder if it was easier to just kind of form game narratives and structures around, choice and consequence, meaning, you pick this dialogue line or you do this quest line, you get this consequence, as opposed to just overall tracking your behaviors.
Yeah.
But
there's nothing wrong with the first version of that. It's just more common.
Yeah. Still,
And easier
it's cool
to
to
maintain.
experience. Yeah, it's cool to experience other forms of, I don't know, narrative fulfillment, I guess, or follow through.
Yeah.
But yeah, would recommend. I know, surprisingly enough, Silent Hill 2 was not like a super scary game for me.
Yeah, because I was gonna say like it's Peter playing a horror game, and that's a big deal.
Exactly.
I mean, honestly, if either of us do that,
The remastered one is much scarier. Like,
oh really?
I don't know if it's just because I played through
At first,
the original after,
yeah.
And so I knew what to expect.
Right.
But also, it's like there's only so much I can be scared of when I'm looking at like 16 pixels stacked on top of each other. It's it's not that bad. Silent Hill 2, like the original, still looks pretty. It looks like a game that came out in 2001. It's like, so it's definitely easier to disconnect yourself from the fright and the terror. But in the remastered one, it's definitely much more visceral. The way they use darkness is like blinding. So without your flashlight, you are not going to be able to see a damn thing.
Oh.
And so they do a
You
really
can't turn off the
interesting.
brightness in game.
You can, but it looks bad.
Sure.
And like it's definitely a good enough looking game that I would want to like. I want to have like the full experience.
Yeah.
But
Right. Yeah.
they
You don't want
use
to
that.
cheese it by doing
Yeah.
that.
They definitely have designed the game really well around the darkness and
Okay.
your flashlight being your only way of seeing anything, because it's very much like a pretty shitty flashlight that only illuminates like maybe 5 feet in front of you, and it's like a very small diameter.
Yeah.
And like sometimes it'll flicker out
Oh.
like in like the most key moments when like a monster comes around the corner and,
Oh,
and you're
shit.
looking, and then it starts like flickering and you're like, oh shit. So it definitely delivers on those moments.
Yeah.
But it's not like it's not super reliant on like jump scares or anything. It's more disturbing
nice.
than it is
Right.
scary.
More of
I
like
guess
the
I would say.
unsettling to reflect the David Lynch stuff, which
Yes,
going back to the
yeah.
acting that you were sort of talking about, because yeah, like even in like David Lynch's stuff, like sometimes it's like I can't even tell if it's just, or at first when I was sort of not used to his stuff, I was like, why is the acting bad? Like almost like that type of thing. Like it sort of feels like that sometimes, rather than it being a stylized thing. Because like our definition of bad, really what that would mean is it's just different, right? In the context of those films where I'm feeling that way. And yeah, I think they try to mimic that even more so in the original with their sort of like unsettling, like
Yep.
sort of deadpanned sort of dialogue and stuff. And I think some people maybe sort of enjoy the original more in that way, but it's probably just like if you grew up with it, you're used to it type of thing.
Yeah.
And the Silent Hill 2 remake is sort of more widely appealing, and maybe makes more sense in the
It's definitely
context of
more
the story. But
commercial.
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, because I guess all of David Lynch's stuff has like almost an element of camp around the way the world is presented to you and the characters are presented to you. They're like often over the top and weird
Right.
and strange. And so the original definitely had that element to it where in my opinion, it's maybe just a step over the camp line where I prefer the more, realistic take on the performances that the remastered have. But I totally understand that, as it's a product of the
more
time, those
stylized.
kind of performances. It's exactly, it's
guess.
like when I'm played through all of the Metal Gear Solid games, like, the voice acting is all great, but it is sometimes very over the top and
Yeah,
exaggerated
I do
and
enjoy the
almost
camp
campy.
of the dialogue
Yeah.
and the writing in those games for the most part.
Yeah.
But
And it's
yeah.
definitely similar, but not as over the top in Silent Hill 2, obviously.
Right.
We're not going for action spy thriller spectacle. We're going for
Espionage action
sad
stealth.
yeah, G.I. Joe cyberpunk android shit. We're instead delving into the psychosis of a man going insane.
Yeah, man.
Sad depression, sad stuff.
Yeah.
And it was
Yeah, what?
I liked going back to Jacob's Ladder and seeing the inspirations that these games
Yeah. So
took,
did you
because
watch like
it
the
is-
David Lynch films and then play this game and then Jacob's Ladder, or did you do the David Lynch stuff
Yes.
sort of after?
Yep.
Okay.
No, that was basically my, I don't know, chronology of going through these media properties, and it made for a very cohesive kind of
Yeah. Interesting.
few weeks that I engaged with all these things. Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, I plan on. I do want to play this game. I was planning on just doing the remake, but now I might have to. I think I'll match you, but instead I'll do it reverse. Well, I'll do the original, and then the remake, and see how that goes.
Yeah, I would love to see.
And we'll
the
represent those two
comparisons.
different opinions there, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
Yeah, because it'll be interesting how the pacing
yeah.
affects you then.
I'll
because,
play the original first.
Yeah.
We'll see. I don't know.
And that will be more of
And
like
then I'll
a
rewatch Jacob Ladder, I guess, to go along with it. Why not?
Why not? We have to compare.
Because it's been
Yeah.
years since I saw that. That was like at least 5 years ago when I watched that movie. So it's
Not
been
a bad
some
thing
time.
to rewatch. Yeah.
All right. Next up, we got I guess the game I was most looking forward to this year, because I don't think too many games were like being announced for coming out so far. Like most recently, Nintendo did have a direct that was about like Switch and Switch 2 games coming out this year, which some of them interest me a little bit. But the one that interested me the most that was releasing this year was not even a brand new game. It was just sort of an enhanced version of an already existing game, that being Xenoblade Chronicles X. This is the definitive addition to it. And Xenoblade Chronicles, the first one, came out on the Wii, and this one came out on the Wii U, which was an interesting console that existed, and a lot of people did not like. I liked it because I played it and had it when I was like 10 years old or whatever, and so I just liked any game that was
During
on
the
X. I'm like, this
formative
is cool.
years, yeah.
Exactly. I want to say this was like 2015 was when the original version for this came out. It's a survival game. I don't know about that. Uh, yeah, 2015. God damn. And yeah, 10 years. For 10 years, it's been locked on the Wii U. And when the Switch first came out, there was a lot of games moved over from the Wii U to the Switch because the Wii U sort of undersold. Not too many people were into it, and then the Switch appealed to a much wider audience, and so they re-released games from the Wii U onto the Switch, and they would sell like way more copies from both the hardcore fans of who wanted every versions of the games they liked, and also just people who skipped out on the Wii U and are sort of maybe interested in those games and were willing to give them a chance on that system there. And the longest one that held out was this one, Xenoblade Chronicles X. For the longest time was just the like really only important Wii U game that was still exclusive to that system. And now it's on the Switch in the definitive version of the game. And I got to say, it's a good improvement overall, though I think they could have done more with it. X is sort of known as the black sheep of the series. The numbered games are each unique and cool and interesting in their own ways. And this one does stuff like a handful of things similarly, but it also goes off on its own and does a lot somewhat uniquely. It's known for being Nintendo's sort of version of an MMO, I guess it can be compared to, which is probably a red flag for people. It's probably it's much better than probably most MMOs, honestly, because it's a full video game. It has some online things, though they're fairly minor and really only matter for the end game, I would say, for the most part. And yeah, the most major improvements to this one, it's like an open world. For some reason, it's called a survival game. It's really just a big JRPG with hella shit to do. The main story is fairly short, and it's spread out in such a way where like you could in theory do it back to back, but the progression is super slow, and you really should mix in a lot of side objectives in between the main stories. So its structure is fairly unique because it revolves around a hub, and you navigate the world from there. And the world design is really well done in this. It's really done. No, it's really well done and well handled in this, because it requires like multiple traversal methods through the player to be like engaging and interesting. Because you need to be able to get through it on foot in a cool and exciting way. And then it also needs to be built around the Skell, which is the big mech that you eventually get and you run and eventually fly around in, which I think I just got that yesterday. I unlocked that for the first time because in the Wii U version, I never got to that point where I was able to fly around in one. And so far it seems cool because it kind of just like, I could go anywhere type of thing. And yeah, it like the world had to be made for both of those, and like that's reflected in just the land that you traverse and also the enemies that you go up against, because some of them are just fucking huge. And so like the scale of everything, it feels quite intricately planned out and designed in such a way, which I would expect from Monolith. They do open world designs quite well. They're known for these games, and they also did a good chunk of the Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom map, which people have complaints about that one because it's too spread out. I would say that's just like they succeed more on the stuff on like the Xenoblade level where it's like it's big, but not like needlessly large. You know what I mean? Like it's where they have that exact control around how big everything could be, so they could work in the precise designs to each like major land formation and stuff like that. So I think the world, I appreciate it a lot more in this one coming into it now for, I guess, the third time, because I played it originally on its release date. And then during the Switch era, I went back to it for a little bit and played more from the beginning. And then now I'm doing it again from the beginning. I'm like, it's interesting because a good chunk of the game so far, I'm finally on the new stuff. But for a while, it was like I'm playing the same shit again. But I'm doing so at a much faster rate. Because I already know sort of what to be doing at what times. And the game is, I think, a little bit easier on you. I think progression goes a little bit quicker. It's a little bit less grindy. I want to say, I've read online that there's, for the monster drops that they give, that it was like some of the shits were super rare and super annoying to get in the original. Apparently they've improved the like drop rate of monster materials and stuff, which I believe a little bit maybe. It still takes way too long sometimes though, if I'm being honest. But that's just the grind of the experience, I guess. And yeah, the main overhauls are visual ones. I think the world looks slightly better overall. I don't know how much they really mess with it. I want to say it's a higher resolution. Maybe like the Wii U is 720, this one's 1080 maybe. It's still at 30 FPS though, which is sort of annoying. But the really main ones are to the character models, which are completely redone. And so a lot of the characters look much better in the cutscenes and stuff. And I guess the armor and every random thing like that does as well look better. And then another major problem with the original was the party system. So it's a party of 4 team members, and the protagonist, who's basically just an avatar character, is required at all times. And then for a lot of the main story missions, 2 other characters are required. And sometimes during the main story missions, it would lock you out of having that additional slot be chosen for anybody. And it also had this issue, which sort of persists in this one for some reason. And that's where, like, once you decide to do a story mission or an affinity mission, which is just a side quest that specifically pertains to a character or a group of major characters, once you select one of them, you're locked into it until you complete it, and you can't take any other affinity or story mission, which I haven't run into many problems with so far, nor did I really in the original, because I sort of just tackled them at like, I'll do the easiest one first that like is available to me at whatever given time. But in the original, it was a much bigger problem because it would lock you to those 2 characters a lot. And so they got rid of that for the most part in this new one, where you could pretty much bring anybody to anything for the most part. So it's much more open about that. And then also the original was really fucking stupid with the way it approached adding and removing party members to your team. You had to find them in the city somewhere, because they'll just like hang out in a particular spot in the hub world, and you had to teleport to them, find them at like, because maybe at certain times also they weren't available. And so you had to find them and then talk to them and be like, go join my party. And then you like can control who was in it from there. And if you wanted to get somebody else, you had to go find them. And now it's just a menu where it's like active members, and you can just remove them from there. It's like, why was that not in the original, guys? Yeah. Like, I'm glad that it's here. It just was like such a questionable decision in the original. And also in this one, their levels scale with you regardless of whether they're in or out of the party. Because there's like I don't know, like 20 or close to 30 additional party members. Like, it's a pretty wide cast that you bring around. So it's especially a big deal if you're trying to use all of them to a certain extent. Especially if you want to do their additional affinity missions, which require you to be at like a certain, essentially like support rank with them, which you increase that through either combat or quests or other dialogue choice options, which give them the pathos, appeals to their emotions or whatever. And so like when you have a system like that, it super matters, like being able to change them in and out of the party, so to like have to go around each time and like fucking find them. Because the other thing was like it wouldn't even let you change the time from a menu either. In the new one it does, but you had to like go around and find like a point in the overworld somewhere where there was like a station and you go to, and it like you could change the in-game time from there. So that was quirky, and now you could just change it from the menu. Like literally all the other Xenoblade games, like all of the other ones let you do it, I think. So it's just like, why? It's weird. But yeah, so everything related to the party and the system with that is a strong improvement, and that's like the most like influential thing that I've come across, definitely, in that balancing of that. Other random things is like as you go around the world, there are these like beacon things that you will approach, and you will like, I don't know, just fuck with them to expand the map. They're almost sort of like Breath of the Wild towers or whatever, where they're to like fill out the map around you to like get sort of a stronger lay of the land and stuff. And you do that in the original game by approaching them, and you spam attack you press the A button rapidly. And in this one, you just hold it down, which is probably better on the thumbs. But in certain weather conditions, when you at any point in time during the holding down, if you take damage, it'll stop that, and you have to do it again. And in certain weather conditions, you will take damage every few seconds. So in the previous original game, if you're under that weather condition and you are installing a probe, is the phrase that I forgot earlier. But if you're doing that and you're rapidly pressing the button, like it doesn't matter if you're getting hit or not, I think. But in this one, when you hold it down and that weather effect comes onto you, you have to like just kind of wait around for it to stop. Because I mean, you could change the time in this one, but which I didn't know at the point I was doing that at. Because if you change the time, it'll probably change the weather. But that's a weird, interesting. It's not really a complaint. It's just something I noticed while playing it. And then the very next day on Twitter, some Japanese person uploaded footage of that same thing happening. So I know that it's happened to at least a other person on the planet, I guess. So that's an interesting interaction there. But yeah, like I enjoyed the world. I enjoy the characters, the side stories. The main story is okay. But like my biggest thing is like the combat I'm not super duper into. It feels the most MMO out of all of them, and just sort of convoluted, and there's a lot going on that I haven't exactly learned super well. So I sort of struggle on occasion, but you could also just like kind of break the game by just going to online mode, and then you could hire for a certain amount of real life time. You could hire like NPC versions of other players. So I just go there and I search by like level and just get like the highest one, and then just temporarily join them to my team and then have them beat whatever dudes I'm struggling with. Because then also sometimes like when you lose enough times in a row on a particular story mission fight, it'll be like, would you like to lower the difficulty and try again? Which I've encountered other games that have done that. And to me, what that indicates is that either you're trying to tailor to a casual audience who like don't want to be invested in your systems or whatever, or it's the thing you have is kind of broken and kind of bogus and like and not really well balanced. And that's sort of the vibe that I get from this one. Like I'm fine with that existing, but I would also just prefer to know what the fuck is going on anyways and be able to just do it, you know? Is it a skill issue? Maybe, but they have that option specifically in the game. So it's like, why would I first of all not take advantage of that? And then also, what does that actually mean if they have that in game? You know what I mean? So that's what I'm sort of thinking of that. That confirms my slight, not like, I don't like unenjoy it. I don't like hate it. It's just kind of like, It's probably the worst combat system in the trilogy, or compared to the numbered trilogy. I would say, and so yeah, it's overall still a really cool, really enjoyable time in JRPG land, because it's certainly one of those. It's one of the JRPGiest JRPG. There's hella shit to do. Gameplay is slow, but I'm here for that, and I think it's cool, and it's a great, nice world, and it's much better overall. But I still think they could have done some more overhaul type of stuff. But the quality of life improvements that did exist are nice and appreciated, and I really, really like this one. Not my favorite from the series, but it's a series of bangers, so it's sort of hard to beat out in the end. But I'm glad it exists. I'm glad I'm playing it. I'm glad it is on the newer system or whatever. So yeah, it's cool.
Yeah. Whenever I get around to eventually playing through all of
Oh shit!
That's a franchise though that I think so, because like
I would recommend the numbered ones more so. I mean, this one is something like it's pretty specific, I feel like, in terms of like who it markets towards, like even more so than the numbered ones, because those ones are much more story driven, and this one, the story takes a backseat to everything else, from the
world and
exploration and the side objectives and stuff.
Cool. Wow.
But yeah, I'm looking forward to the day when Peter hits this series, because it's one of my favorites, and they're very consistent in their quality.
Yeah, they are all fairly long though.
Mm-hmm.
That will be a franchise that I would have a hard time just going back to back to back.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But speaking of franchises, I guess I don't know exactly what set my path this time, but I was inspired to play through all of Remedy Entertainment's games. So they are a game developing company known for making Alan Wake. They did Quantum Break, they did Control, and they did Max Payne. And I had, heard about many of these games as they were coming out, and, they've all gotten, for the most part, positive buzz. But, as the years have gone on, people have grown more and more celebratory of this game studio. And so I kind of did some research, or I watched a few videos here and there, and it seems like Remedy has created a shared universe between all of their games.
Interesting.
And so you'll see characters pop up from one game to another, which I love that kind of thing. I love a shared universe. Mm-hmm. I love like a Cosmere or a cinematic universe. I don't care. It's very easy for me to enjoy that. It offers so much. It's kind of fan service to see a character that you already know in a different context, but I'm still a sucker for it. So I ended up checking out 5 games from them.
Oh damn.
Starting off with Alan Wake. Mm-hmm. And so the first game that they actually released was, I guess, the first well-known game that Remedy released was Max Payne. But I will talk about that later.
Okay.
The first one that I played through was Alan Wake. It's a very strange game. It's third person. It's titled as like an action horror, but really the gameplay is by far the least interesting aspect of this game. The narrative and the writing, it takes so much more of the priority that I honestly could even say that at some points the gameplay is kind of bad and hinders it. But the story and the writing more than carries the rest of the game. It's really strange. Remedy and Sam Lake is the lead kind of creative director there. And he's known for being essentially a Finnish version of Hideo Kojima, just being like a very kind of eccentric, really, appreciative game developer that, wears their influences on their sleeves and takes those influences and molds it into very unique and interesting worlds, narratives, characters, all that. And so Sam Lake kind of is I guess the mastermind behind this whole shared universe. And so Alan Wake is a strange mishmash of his inspirations, as well as a story of essentially an author who is writing a book, doesn't remember writing a book, but the pages to this manuscript are coming true. And it gets super meta, it gets super strange. It's basically if Stephen King was forced into the Twin Peaks universe, and things kind of went sideways and eldritch and weird.
Interesting.
Because there's obviously a ton of Lynch influence in the kind of weird abstract quality to the narrative, where there's a lot of things that are, aren't necessarily important to understand, but more to act as like world building and atmosphere. And the actual story is easier to follow than a Lynch story would be, but it's still fragmented and strange, with Alan, delving into what reality is, because the words that he is writing is impacting reality. It gets very strange, very meta, but it's hard to explain. But the actual process of going through it is super entertaining and very strange. There's a moment where he's essentially being gaslit by a psychologist to try and understand that the things that are happening in the game are actually just a symptom of his psychosis that happened when his wife died. It's very strange, and it takes a lot of liberties with gameplay structure. But overall, I think the actual gameplay, that being third person wander around levels that are initially set up as really large, almost open world levels. The game was initially developed to be an open world game, but then budgetary, whatever time constraints, they instead chunked up the open world into different levels, which really doesn't translate super well, because a lot of the time you're just running over not empty nothing, but the world design is not super engaging or like jam-packed of a bunch of secrets, stuff like that. And so there's a lot of pluses and pros to this game on the narrative side, and then some rather drastic cons in the gameplay side. Overall, I think it's still a really fun experience that I would play through just for the narrative. I'd give it like a 7 out of 10. It's really incredibly unique, and the story is something that I really haven't played through anything like it before. It's set up into essentially episodes. There's like 5 episodes, and you play through them like straight through. There's no really, I guess, gameplay interactivity with the episode or the episodic structure. But it adds to the mystique and the strangeness that is Remedy's game development. It's hard to explain how particular their games are, but once you start playing them, it's easy to be charmed by them if you're willing to look past some kind of lower quality aspects. Overall, I think they build worlds super well. Just sometimes they don't have the resources required to fully flesh out some of the ideas that they have, because it is a smaller studio, although they've definitely gotten a lot more success recently. And so after Alan Wake, I played through Quantum Break, which was one that came out on like Xbox One. It was one of the launch titles. It has Shawn Ashmore as the lead character, who is Iceman from the original X-Men. Who directed those? Was that Bryan Singer?
That sounds right.
Yeah. But he's Iceman from that, and he plays the main character. And essentially this Quantum Break one is about time travel, and there are the gimmick of this game is there are like full TV episodes at the end of each gameplay episode.
Oh.
So there's like a full 20-minute long just like television show, 5 of them, and you can watch them or you could skip them. They kind of add to the world, but aren't necessarily required watching for you to understand the gameplay.
They're a television show in universe,
yeah.
like about what, like something
No,
that relates to the
it's
game?
just like it's the same characters, same world, same story, just I guess following like a different set of characters that aren't like directly it's so strange because like there's no reason for it. Okay. Like you could just have like in-game cinematics do all this stuff, like, you know, people say to Hideo Kojima, I guess. Mm-hmm. But instead they did the effort of, you know, getting a bunch of actors. Lance Reddick is in here. I can't remember his name, but Peter Baelish from Game of Thrones is in here. Yeah. A lot of like great actors, and the actual like the story is tropey. It's time travel and like, you know, very quantum mechanics, weird shit like that. What is like the loop and consequence? Can you change the past? Whatever. But the actual the set dressing and the world building all is like has a ton of detail to it and makes it really enjoyable to play through. The gameplay is much better in this game than Alan Wake. You get these kind of time manipulation mechanics where you can like stop time in a bubble, shoot at that bubble and stack a bunch of bullets, and then once it breaks, then all the bullets kind of converge on a point and do a bunch of damage. You can like obviously like kind of like dash using time mechanics or various other stuff, all invoke like kind of playing around the idea of time manipulation. And the story is maybe my least favorite of the games that they've created, but it's still like ambitious, and it has a lot of like impressive quality to the like the cinematics and the visual storytelling. This Quantum Break is maybe my least favorite of the Remedy games that I've played now, but I think it's still good. The gameplay itself is, I think, some of the most fun that I've had playing their games. Although after that I played through Control, which is essentially their version of an SCP Foundation, essentially. You play as a newcomer to the Federal Bureau of Control, which track and contain different paranatural entities, which are essentially SCPs. And for anyone who doesn't know, those are kind of weird internet lore that, you know, people just create.
Very specific and typically horror oriented. Yeah. And like just super specific and like weird and out there, and just like comes from the minds of like random people just like coming up with weird random horror out there.
It's like all fan made and like just a shared universe that people get to add like interesting, you know, just
and because it's such like a community thing, there's a lot of like, I mean, I haven't looked into it too much, but I assume there's a lot of like really bad and then some good and then, you know, like a mix of just like every sort of varying level of quality.
And Control takes the ideas and like the world building that having a foundation or a like a protection agency like that, and then like building a world around that, except that all of these things are all in the same universe. And so in Control specifically, it became more apparent that the worlds of Alan Wake and Quantum Break technically isn't in the same world because it's rights issues, but like the characters show up. It's so strange and it's so meta, and as you get further and further into these games, it just kind of all builds together. Alan Wake 2 specifically, all of the games are like included, but they're all included as different character names. Like the protagonist from Quantum Break is in Alan Wake 2, but he is not named the same character. He's instead named Tim Breaker. quantum breaker, time breaker. It's all like
Because of
it's
rights,
all
or just
together
because of like
because of rights, but also because, as
they
we've
try to
said, like
justify it?
Remedy is so well. They're very much inspired by Lynch,
Oh,
and
I see.
his. I see a
Multiple
ton of
identities.
similarity between the use of, yeah, exactly, like doppelgangers or people who have the same face
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
are and the same essence but are called a different thing.
There's so much
And
similar
it
to that in the next game I'll
incredibly
talk
so
about, but
because
very different.
yeah, like the way they do it with this universe is super, like it's super cool once you are like fully bought into it as I am. Um, Honestly, surprising. Most of these games are not that long. Like Alan Wake, Quantum Break, Control, I would say, and even Max Payne are all like they're all maybe 6 hours, maybe 6 hours plus or minus an hour, and so they're very kind of cinematic experiences. But because they're like it's told through the framework of a video game, it's a lot more immersive, and lets you feel that weird kind of sense of world building and narrative fragmentation in a very strange way. I'm have found myself to be a big fan of them.
Hmm.
I think Control had the strongest gameplay throughout all the games I've played. You get to use like weird like telepathic powers and other unique effects that you get from binding to certain like SCP objects of powers they're called. And you know, it's Control had such an interesting world and fantastic art design. It's all located in a single building in New York called the Oldest House, but this Oldest House is essentially like an eldritch kind of location that exists across planes and is like vastly bigger on the inside
Okay.
and can lead to different like worlds and planes of existence, but it acts on its own accord. It's like essentially a living entity, and so the Federal Bureau of Control that exists within it is really playing by the house's rules at the end of the day. And so getting to design that building and get to play around with the concepts of this world allowed the art team to just do like fantastic things. The levels are really cool. The entire building is kind of set up in a very like brutalist architectural design, and the actual like sets and items around the world are like harken back to like Cold War tech, with like a bunch of like slide projectors and like film reels, for narrative purposes, but it all just helps to set the world and make it really engaging. It's Control is one of the favorites that I played through. Alan Wake 2 I would also put up there, just because of how the weird meta like reality that Alan Wake 1 was just gets even stranger in 2. 2 definitely is the most horror like oriented game that they've made. Even though all of their games, I guess, have like a appreciation for the horror genre. Alan Wake 2 is probably the most successful game that they've made, though. It's just super polished, looks fantastic. All of the acting and cinematics are great. Another way that the use of doppelgangers and characters that are or aren't owned by the IP and they have the rights to or not is further solidified by the fact that they use a lot of the same actors again in different characters. So like the voice actor for Alan Wake is only the voice actor. He's not the face actor. The face actor is a different person. And so the face actor also plays a different character in Alan Wake 2 other than Alan Wake. And then the voice actor from Alan Wake 2 plays a different character in Control. And so Control, you have it like the character, the voice of Alan Wake you see on the screen as a character. And that character appears in Alan Wake 2 along with Alan Wake, who is voiced by the character that is played through in Control. It gets so strange. And it really rewards players who have invested the time into their other
like you
games,
binging
but
all
it's
of
not.
them.
Yeah, but it's not like gratuitous or
Right.
out of the ordinary. Like they're actors and they can take any sort of role that they want. But the way that the team at Remedy utilizes that and explores the weird meta, I guess, like associations that we have with the characters versus the actors, and they get to play around with that in ways that games aren't used, like they don't really do that, or at least not many that I've played. So it's very fun. They're very like kind of tongue-in-cheek games. Max Payne especially, the first game that they kind of came out with, and the one that I just played through recently, it is very much like super, almost a parody of a noir style of game. Like you have your hard-boiled detective, and like he speaks in that like the words that are like I guess the prose that is so often associated with your Humphrey Bogarts or your I guess your Private Eyes, but Max Payne is one of the first instances of using like bullet time as a game mechanic, and definitely popularized it as it came out like the year after the Matrix, and so it was one of the first that people got to play around with that, which is why it got so big. But the actual like the story is what I thought was like the strongest part of Max Payne by far. The actual narrative and the world, it's so strange and like psychotic and dreamlike. I'm playing through the second one now, second Max Payne. These are all just like really enjoyable games. I'm surprised at how much I've liked basically every game. Quantum Break is maybe my least favorite, along with Alan Wake 1, but both of those games have like incredibly ambitious aspects to it that I think work to bolster the game in spite of the flaws that I find. And the rest of the games that they've made have all been like really just enjoyable throughout. So I know it's hard to recommend all of them or let alone any of them. But the reason I wanted to play, I guess I heard very good things about Alan Wake 2 recently because it just came out last year, 2 years ago now. And I knew I couldn't play that one without playing any of the other ones.
You did the
So
full
if you're gonna
context
play,
to everything.
Because Alan Wake 2 is definitely the one game that it doesn't rely on having played any of the other games,
Sure.
but it's very much utilizes the full world that they've created, or the full universe that they've created. Control is maybe my favorite standalone game experience, and then Max Payne is maybe my second. So I would recommend those because those are a little more concise. You get a good feeling of what their world building design, their art design, and their storytelling as well. So yeah,
nice.
Long-winded way of saying that I like Remedy Entertainment, and I guess they've won me over.
Yeah, cool. I had no idea any of these ones were related, even in like a minor way. Something. Because I either own Control or it's on my wish list, so I plan on at least going after that one, and then maybe I'll tackle the Alan Wakes and the Max Paynes and the other one.
Yeah, if you find yourself enjoying Control, then I think it would be worth it to read up on all of them, because Control is very much like a game where you look at the notes around the world in order to build up an understanding of the world, because it's just a bunch of like documents lying around or whatever.
Right.
And you'll pick up some documents that mention Alan Wake, and they mention an object of power at Cauldron Lake, which happened in like 2000 whatever, and you're like, wait, that sounds a lot like the game that I just played. Yeah.
Interesting.
So very cool.
Yeah, nice. I just got one last one here that I'm still going through. I'm also still technically going through Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition. I'll probably be weaving in and out of that one for at least the next couple of months or so, maybe. I'm like most of the way through the story of that, and then like I'll probably get through the story and then do a little bit of the additional side content after that, and then be done with it. I don't plan on doing much of like the super end game stuff or whatever, because there's just a lot of shit going on with that I don't really want to have to deal with. But anyways, this other one that I've been playing through and I'm still currently getting through is a Fire Emblem game, and it's a series that the two of us, we both enjoy quite a bit. Have you played all of them, or is there like any that you've missed out
I'll play
on?
through all of them now.
Like New
Yeah,
Mystery,
all
The
of them.
Emblem, and like shit like that. You've done all of them.
Oh, like I guess I haven't played.
The
I played through
remakes of
the
some.
remakes instead
Okay.
of the
Instead of the
original.
OGs,
Like,
I see.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that's probably what I would do as well, because there's like how many of them mainline ones now, like 17 or
yeah,
18.
yep. 18.
Yeah, and
I think.
unfortunately in the newest Nintendo Direct there was not the Fire Emblem 4 remake announcement, or any Fire Emblem game, but I was getting
Unfortunately.
the itch to go back to the series and to play one of them. And it's a series where like, yeah, there's 18 of them, and I have only played either 5 or 6 of them, so that's like a third or less. And it's, I could play one of the ones that I haven't played yet, or I could play one of the ones that I've already played and I like. So I decided to do that, and I am
Mm,
specifically revisiting Fire Emblem Fates, which is
interesting.
one that like it didn't have controversy when it came out, but it had a lot of mixed emotions, because it's coming off of Awakening, which is the game that saved
Revitalized.
saved the
Yeah.
series, whereas like it
Hmm.
has that legendary like this series will end if this shit does not sell, and it did. And so the series continued on, and it's as far as Nintendo goes, it's one of their more important IPs, I would say, in the modern day. It's become bigger, especially Three Houses
Hmm.
was quite popular because it catered a bit more to a casual crowd with the bigger emphasis on story and characters rather than gameplay, and it had a lot of free time activities rather than like just being in actual maps and stuff. And I think Fates hits the strongest balance in terms of like the out of combat in combat stuff, where it's just that my castle and the supports they really don't take that long. And like I sort of enjoyed the Somnial of Engage, but I think it's, I mean, especially if you do everything which you really wanted, you really want to get all those bond fragments,
Hmm.
because they're an important currency there. So especially if you do all those, it does feel like a little long in that. And the Three Houses one, it just felt that the fucking the what's it called, the school
Academy, the
academy
monastery. Yeah.
monastery. Yeah, that
Garrett
shit
Mod.
just took way too long, man. I'm
It
ended
did.
my
Yeah.
life over that or whatever. And the Fates hits a better balance, and this one was released to like sort of mixed feelings, because I don't know, people liked Awakening a lot, because I mean for me it was the first one, and this one. I think overall, honestly, looking at it now and coming back to it, I'm only part of the way through Birthright, but I think already it's just like sort of a better video game than Awakening. I think honestly, it's a lot more balanced is the main thing, because Awakening is sort of easy to break in terms of like character setups and like the child units especially, and the pair up system. It's just all sort of broken, and they balance everything in here, where the child units aren't necessarily as good in Fates. They have a less of a narrative reason to exist, but like I don't know, like whatever, I'm fine with it. I don't really care much for the story in this one. I think it's because this is one where there's 3 separate titles for them. There's Birthright, Conquest, and Revelation. I've never beaten Revelation. I've gotten like most of the way through it, but I've beaten Birthright and Conquest however many years ago now. And Birthright is known for being easier and having a better story, even though like I really don't
Yes.
think like the story's that much better. Maybe, I mean, I guess I'll find that out or refine that out
They're very
as I get
similar.
to
I think, yeah, Revelation is the worst one, story-wise by
yeah.
far, and the least interesting gameplay-wise.
Hmm.
Conquest is why they celebrate it as having the best gameplay,
Yeah,
maybe of the
because
series.
it's tough
Of
or whatever.
yeah, and just like much better design and like I guess, mission design,
Hmm.
with more varied win conditions or lose
Yeah.
conditions. Because a lot of Fire Emblem games, a lot of maps are just the same, route the enemy. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
cool. All right.
Yeah, and Fates, it definitely leans more into each map feeling different, like either from the objective or specific gimmicks apply to each map, which is pretty important because each of the three uh, games of this game, um, they will reuse the same maps, but they will do so in different ways, where they will reuse the same map, but you'll be from a different starting point. You'll be tackling the map at a different point in the game. There's a different context of the story as to like why you're there, different mission objective, and all that, and different like levels of difficulty with like the same maps and stuff like that. So it like creates, even though that you're playing the same like layout, you're still tackling it in a different enough way to sort of justify each version of them existing. Which, so far I haven't experienced much of that in this recent run because I've only just gone through a part of Birthright. Just specifically, I'm playing this on my Steam Deck, which I got, or on my laptop,
Mm.
which I got, or fucking. I plan on eventually transferring this to the Steam Deck once I get a port for that, because I'm running it on my laptop right now and it's kind of laggy as shit. A little bit because I'm trying to do like the mods to make it, or the textures to make it look nicer, which it doesn't look a lot nicer. It just lags sometimes and stuff. Because yeah, I owned it on the 3DS, and still do. It sunk however many, like couple hundred maybe hours into it or something, and I only beat it each of the routes once, and just kind of I like started and stopped them a bunch of times because that's what I would do at that age. Because I think this one also came out in 2015. Same with Xenoblade X. What is
Around
this,
then, yeah.
2025 or 2015? What are we living in? But yeah, it's I like the characters in this, and I think like the because the main thing missing from Engage, which it really doesn't need this at all because it has so much else going on. But like the marriage system, like when I was thinking back on it, I was really only thinking about it in terms of like, oh, the narrative of people enjoying shipping or whatever, which I'm cool with, but I don't really care about that much. But in
Mm.
Fates, it actually does matter a substantial amount, not just for determining the child units, but also the adult characters benefit from it quite heavily too with the class system, where they can borrow their partner's class,
Mm.
which is really interesting, and it creates like a whole new level to like the class system, which I think is one of the better ones in the series, honestly, because it's much more controlled and limited initially than Awakenings, but it has like a wider array of customization surrounding it. Because in Awakening, every character gets three base class lines, and then from there it would be like six in total advanced classes. But sometimes it's like five if one of them is like overlapping. You know what I mean? Um, and in Fates, it's everybody just has two, but then they get one from their partner and one from their best friend because that's also a thing. Um, and it just creates another layer of creativity, like flexibility, team building stuff. Um, and it's just really cool. And the way that the changing classes and the obtaining skills and stuff like that, I think it's much better than Awakenings, where it would reset the level and it would require a lot more grinding to get like the like specific setup of skills that you wanted on each unit because the level would reset, so you would have to get them all the way to whatever levels again to get the other skills. But in this one, it's the level carries over from one class level to another. Because when you promote to an advanced class, then it resets you. But once you're already in that advanced one and you go from one to the other, it'll maintain that. So if you're at level 5 in one class, you get the skill from that, and then you go to the other one, and then you get another level in that, you'll start to get the skills from that other class, which is, I think, a much better way of handling that. And it's just a cool system overall that I've only been able to so far mess around with only a little bit, but as I continue to advance more in the game, plan on doing more of that, because I've watched like hella YouTube videos about it, because there's still some people making the Fire Emblem Fates
Oh yeah.
content in the current year. There's still, I mean, probably for each game in the series, there's YouTubers messing around with them, breaking the meta and showing off whatever sort of thing. So I've been watching hella of those
Mm-hmm.
just to get ideas and stuff. So um, it's been fun going through those, and so far it's been nice when it's not being a laggy, silly mess and whatnot. So yeah, I will talk more about this game in the future, probably along with, I guess, Xenoblade X as well, maybe. Because yeah, I'm only maybe like a third or halfway through Birthright, and there's still 2 more games after that. I plan on playing Conquest sort of immediately after, and then maybe take a short break and then do Birthright eventually, which I plan on definitely beating that one this time around, rather than just getting most of the way there and then backing away from it. So yeah, look forward to that, people, because I know that's what they want. They want more Fire Emblem discussion.
More Fire Emblem. It is, I don't have a ton of friends who have ever played Fire Emblem, but
Oh yeah,
both of us are big fans
yeah.
of the
Our friend
franchise.
group of guys they're pretty normal when it comes to
Yeah,
video games and
yeah.
stuff. So they don't like this single player games. They're like, why would I ever fucking do that? I'm like, they don't know. They need to be educated. They need to
They
listen to
don't
this podcast, and
understand.
then they'll learn.
Exactly. All right. But that takes us to the end of our video game section.
Yes, sir.
So
On
I
the
have my
music
monthly music catch up.
with
And
Peter.
there's been a lot of music coming out this March.
Damn, that's
Very,
a
very
long ass
strong.
list.
Very strong.
This
music.
is all this year from the last month.
Yep. Yep.
Damn.
And so we will go through these quickly, starting off with Dead Channel Sky by Clipping. Really cool kind of art project. They do really interesting industrial hip hop, with this specific album leaning more into like an electronic avenue for their production. Really cool, kind of dark, weird, kind of almost like a cyberpunk dystopian aspect to this album. Really cool. I would recommend. Another great album that came out, possibly my album of the year right now, is Hornet. Comes from Weather Day, called Hornet Disaster, and this is just some fantastic emo music. I don't listen to like a ton of emo. I do really like some of the more celebrated acts, but Weather Day was dropping a ton of singles for this album, and each of them I loved, and I knew as soon as the album dropped, I was gonna fuck with it heavy. And this thing is harsh. It's incredibly lo-fi, and the production is so distorted. It's honestly hard to recommend to some extent because of how heavy and crushing some of the production is, but I just think it's so vibrant and emotional and authentic that I just fell in love with it, and it's something that I would strongly recommend. Men I Trust came out with a new album, Equus Asinis. It's their classic blend of bedroom pop mixed with kind of lounge jazz music, some sophisti-pop elements, very kind of mellow and kind of sweet, lush and dreamy. A very pleasant listen. Another album from Japanese Breakfast, called For Melancholy Brunettes and Sad Women. She kind of broke onto the scene with Jubilee I forget how many years ago, but this is her new album in a while. It's pretty short. It's very nice to listen to, I think. Really great songwriting, and kind of world building, and I think Japanese Breakfast's songwriting has been her strongest suit. But very similar kind of singer-songwriter, indie pop stuff to her previous album, but maybe less energetic, a little more melancholy, as the title would tell you. Charlie Crockett dropped a new album called Lonesome Drifter. Just some great kind of a contemporary take on classic like outlaw country. Really fun listen to. Pretty, warm and summer vibes to this one. He's got a great voice and some great songwriting. Definitely takes you back to, Johnny Cash, Willie Nelson era of country. And Perfume Genius dropped another album I thought was really lovely. Great kind of singer-songwriter stuff. Really pretty instrumentations and kind of lush arrangements from Blake Nelson, or Blake Mills, who has been doing production for Perfume Genius, and then just the great songwriting and just a great album in general. Lucy Dacus dropped another album from her. Really good indie folk. Maybe not her most interesting album, but I thought it was still a pleasant listen and not as energetic as some of her other stuff, more restrained and some might say boring, but I think there's a lot of emotion in this album that, you can dive into if you feel that it calls to you. New album from Spelling, Portrait of My Heart. This is a interesting kind of different like avenue for Spelling to take, because the other album that I know from her called The Turning Wheel is much more of an art pop and more pop oriented, whereas this one is more her experimenting in rock and more, heavier sounds, which I think works for her. Her voice is still fantastic, and the album has a bunch of energy. Still got that kind of lush, dreamy aspect to her music, but with some heavier instrumentation and production. Another album from Destroyer, kind of classic art rock, indie project from Canada. They have like decades of stuff under their belt, and he's still making great music. Very kind of weird and meta and self-referential, delving a lot into what it is to be an artist for 20 years making music. But cool if you have ever listened to Destroyer to kind of get him in that self-referential mood. Another fantastic album from Deaf Heaven, Lonely People with Power. Another one that is in contention for album of the year for me. It's metal, black gaze, black metal, whatever you want to call it. It's very heavy, incredibly so, just crushing production. The guitars, the drums, everything sounds fantastic. It's just so energetic and thrashing and pummeling, very aggressive, but still with that lovely kind of melodic undertone that comes with the black gaze genre. Deaf Heaven has always been a pretty consistent band for me, but I think this is their strongest, in my opinion. It's just something really excellent, and a generational metal project for me. Really, really excellent. Black Country New Road also dropped a new album, Forever How Long. They have kind of started to transition away from their more post-rock elements to their music, and are now going in a more, pastoral, progressive, and Baroque pop avenue. Lots of references and influence taken from Joanna Newsom and other artists like that. Very pretty, very lush. All of the singers do a fantastic job. Great, lovely, interesting, and kind of quirky songs and songwriting and song structure to accompany that. Another album from Florist, which is called Jellyfish. Very kind of classic indie folk, very mellow, very kind of warm and little dreamlike, very, acoustic forward, giving me a lot of like spring vibes. And then one more album from Jane Remover called Revenge Seekers. And this thing is equally as harsh as Lonely People with Power, but blended with this weird electronic digicore aspect to it. It's another really harsh listen to, but it's got a ton of energy, ton of like really cool production choices. I think it's my favorite from Jane Remover. It's also up there for favorite of the year. It's really cool. Another really strange one to recommend just because it's a little, left field out there. But it blends this super kind of glitchy hyperpop production style that she's known for with more contemporary trap and rage and like hip hop elements that is just a really cool fusion, and I think worked out super well for her. So that takes us to the end of the month for music.
Yeah, damn.
Quite a lot
we're out
this
of the
year.
slow January, February.
Yeah,
whatever.
we are. They're now making.
They're not
bangers
making music.
only, it seems like. Yeah, a lot of great stuff
Nice.
that I've been very much enjoying listening to.
Hells to the freak, yeah, man. On my end, I got nothing. We could move on.
Any books then? Have you been reading?
I read a small sliver of The Way Kings. Not much else to say about it though. Still
Okay.
enjoying it. I'm still almost halfway through. I think I'm not even. I like might be on the halfway mark or just a few pages away from it. So
It's a big book.
Mhm.
It's a massive book.
yes, sir.
I read a big book.
Okay.
A big book that was maybe not as good. I read Onyx Storm for book club, which is part of the Empyrean series, which started with Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. It's TikTok fantasy for lack of like a better word for it.
Sure.
Where you have your blending of kind of I would put it as YA fantasy elements with more like mature romance story, and so you kind of try and blend those together. Makes it very marketable and very readable, but really that only worked so well for the first book in this series. I would say Fourth Wing is the most popular by far. People are still liking the series, I guess, but I think it's just gotten worse as it's gone on.
Did you just read the first one?
No, this is the third one. Onyx Storm is the third one.
Damn.
So we've been reading that as
Okay.
as a book club book for a while
Sure.
now. I guess only like 2 years. It's 3 books in 2 years, which I guess speaks volumes to what kind of quality you might expect, especially
Yeah, this
considering
one
these
came
are
out
like
in January this year,
these are long books. Like
and she just pumps them out.
but they're long because they're bloated. There's not a lot happening in each of these books, and they follow a very similar structure that becomes really predictable. Characters are just not super interesting for me, and there's a really kind of flimsy world building. Not a great book. Wouldn't recommend, but it is.
People
it
on
is what I
Goodreads
read.
love it though. 4.2 out of 5, Peter. We gotta bring
they-
this shit down. I'm joking.
I'll put it on the record. Goodreads is the worst
Yeah.
aggregation site on the internet. It is
It sucks.
awful.
It sucks. I still use it though.
Just because
It's
of
the only book
it's the biggest book
Yeah.
aggregation site, but it is also like
fucking sucks.
one of the only ones. So that's why the fact that you can only do 1 out of 5 rating, you can't like
There's no half.
there's no
it's
half
stupid.
rating. There's no like 1 out of 10. It's it's awful, and the fact that the
The
actual
UI is bad.
the people
slow
who use
also.
Goodreads
It's really slow.
are it's much more of a social thing than I think I would like out of my literary analysis.
Yeah, I think it's
slash
like
rating
as
thing.
casual as it gets. Like even Letterboxd
Yeah.
with all their memeing, it's still like there's still like more
Yeah,
in-depth
they
reviews that you
appreciate
can
good
go to on
movies.
that.
Yeah. Whereas like the the dichotomy between what would be considered like the classics of literature, like the English canon,
Right.
on Goodreads, the ratings you're going to see are like 3.6 maybe.
Yeah.
But then you'll go to
Yeah.
the biggest fiction novel that
Something
came
like
out
this.
in the past 2 years, something like Fourth Wing or whatever, and they're going to be like 4.2,
Right.
4.3.
Because it's a matter of
So
like books. Less people are reading them than people are watching movies. So it's like it's a matter of like the only people really going after and like reading a book this massive typically are the people who are going to be really into it. And like the
I
only
don't
people
even
who
know
are
if
going
that's
to
the
like
case.
I feel like it is for like putting and then like going out and putting out a review on it. Like you're only gonna read something like this and like that's your sort of thing. So that's why it'll be lopsided on like one side or another. Meanwhile, those classics that like might be better overall, it's like they're gonna hit like a much wider crowd of people, and especially like if they read them in school and didn't like them for that reason or some shit, it's
Hmm.
gonna like affect their opinion on it. And it's like so yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's true. I mean, Goodreads is still big enough to where that like the largest books on the platform are going to get like a million or so like reviews or ratings, which is like
Yeah, still,
a
yeah,
similar amount to how much
yeah. Letterbox gets,
a letterbox will get.
yeah,
Like the
they'll get
big
more. Like there's
blockbusters
a
of the
good
year.
chunk of them that have more than a million logs or reviews on that site.
Yeah, like for last year, Dune Part 2 got 2.8 million, and like the next most popular was Challenges 2.4. So
Yeah,
once you get to those like really big ones, you're gonna have millions of people watching, and then anything past that, Gladiator 2 only got a million or so. So that's kind of the scale that you might have, which still exists for Goodreads, but I think the user base is very different and
totally.
perhaps less perhaps less intellectually inclined
Just say it.
than
Exactly.
I'm gonna say it. No, but that's the only book I read this year or this month. So, any YouTube recommendations for us, Drew?
Yes, I've watched a good number, as I said earlier, Fire Emblem Fates content in the current year. Specifically, there's this channel name called Zoran. He's pretty well known in the Fire Emblem Fates space, and he specifically has this playlist of YouTube videos called the Train Everyone Challenge, where he plays Fire Emblem Conquest and he tries to use every unit on Lunatic. And it's kind of like the most insane shit I've ever looked at, because it's like he's done multiple runs of this, and he's gotten to the point where like every turn is like perfectly planned out, and he like it's not a typical Let's Play where like the person playing the game might explain all the game mechanics and like help go over the story and give like background on the game and like all that random stuff. For this one, he sort of expects the viewer to have some basic underlying knowledge of Fates and its mechanics. He's like not explaining how the skill inheritance or like system and class changing system works. He's not like taking the time for that. But like what he is doing is like within every chapter, he's explaining like, here's an optimal way to do this. Here's how I'm doing it. And just like turn by turn, like the exact plays of like what he's doing and explaining in post commentary, like what he's doing and why he's doing it. And that kind of stuff. And just like the most specific shit where it's like, I want this character to get this kill, but they're all the way over here, so I need to do these transfers to get them over here. But with this weapon, they'll be not accurate enough, so I need to position this character here to give them the accuracy bonus boost, and then I need to position this character with Heartseeker here, which will reduce the avoid on the enemy. And then they fucking like stack other random skills. Like it's just pure like knowledge and like like min-maxing and like not at all displaying a way that you should play the game, but he's doing like he's just sort of showing off like here's a way to play the game that he has sort of perfected over just the course of many years. And it's still an ongoing series. He began it 3 years ago. And it's still going, and it sucks getting caught up with it and having to wait like probably like it seems like every 3 months or so on average. He'll upload a chapter. And yeah, he still has a ways to go on it. He's maybe like halfway through it or so, if I had to guess, because he's like doing every character, like getting them the child units and all the paralogs and stuff like that, and like without DLC and stuff. And yeah, it's just really well handled overall, and it's also interesting because it's he's using this like fan made mod of Conquest to like that changes the story. It's called like the Garen Good or something mod, where like it's just trying to like fix the stupid story that Conquest has. So it's simultaneously like this super optimized run showcase of like he does explain like overall like character bios and like explains like what they're good at, what people consider them to be, like how they should sort of be used, and then like how he might be using them in different ways and stuff like that. And it's like all of that on top of like this interesting review of this fan made like version of the story as well. So it's honestly really cool, and I would recommend checking it out to people who are interested in Fire Emblem Fates in the modern day, which is probably not a whole lot of people, because like he is as far as the modern day Fates community, like he's pretty well known. Like in all like all of the other Fates videos that I was watching, he was commonly mentioned as a person who knew the game quite a lot, specifically Conquest. So there's this series by him, and then there's this other playlist called Fire Emblem Engage Fates, Fire Emblem not Engage Fates Skill Tier List with Lag Spike, which is a playlist by Zoran and this other dude Lag Spike. Who this dude Lag Spike, he sounds like almost exactly like Ralph the Movie Maker. And like he like when he rambles and like rants about stuff, he like enunciates stuff like in like the exact same way that Ralph does. So it's like for me really funny to like hear this dude hear like almost essentially Ralph ramble off about Fire Emblem Fates Conquest meta. And it's a really great playlist. It's 3 videos, 7 hours in total of just 2 dudes talking about Fire Emblem Fates skills for fucking
About
7
as
hours.
granular and niche as you can ask for.
And the audio in the second video really sucks. It reminded me of like the shit we made, but it's like a bit worse. It's like, but it's still like really good content overall. And so yeah, I would recommend mostly the main Zoran Train Everyone challenge series, because it's really awesome. It's like one of the coolest things I've seen on YouTube in a while. And if you're craving even more Fire Emblem Fates meta stuff, I mean, there's hella videos of like team building shit and like whatever stuff like that. And the skilled tier lists playlist is quite nice also, so I recommend those.
Very cool. I didn't watch a ton of interesting YouTube. I guess I have a channel shout out called
They need our
Bizly
numbers.
Channel.
Sorry, what?
Yeah, Bizly Channel,
Bizly.
Bizly. I kind of saw a video from him last year, and it's a pretty young channel, only a few years old. They started doing a bunch of like, I played every game, like every Assassin's Creed game, or I played every Star Wars game, or every Batman game, and kind of ranked them. But the more recent videos that I've checked out from them have been really cool and really interesting, like editing wise and production wise, where it's goofy because he'll just like essentially like run through an entire game and kind of talk about moments and analyze it as any game reviewer would do. But he green screens himself into the game in some like really interesting ways. Yeah. But like it's a lot more in depth, and you know he'll get props and like actually go into the game environments and like interact with them just by using like clever green screen kits.
Yeah, cool.
But yeah, it's just like he's a funny guy with a really interesting editing style that I think is worth mentioning. They've been popping off a bunch. It's not just him; it's definitely a ton of credit goes to his editor. But the way that they've been doing it is really, really fun, and I think cool to see them blow up like this.
Yeah, nice. Kingdom Hearts makes no sense. Added that shit to my watch list.
Yeah, that seems like I haven't watched that one because I still hadn't played through any of them, but figured you might.
Man, I'm waiting for the day when Peter tackles all the Kingdom Hearts games back to back. That's like one series that I tackled back to back, and that was a grueling task.
Endeavor.
That was
Yeah.
tough. Oh my god. But yeah, I'm a Kingdom Hearts fan, by the way. Actually, I'm a fan of the series.
That's how most,
I'm a fan of the series,
Kingdom,
despite like not really liking most of the games.
I think that's how a lot of the fans of the series end up talking about.
That's how it is. That's how it do.
Mhm.
All right, cool. Is that your only YouTube mention?
Yeah, that's all I got.
All right, cool. Well, I hope the people have enjoyed listening to our voices, and will continue to do so for the end of time, because Peter and I will never die, and the viewer might at some point, but we won't. So we'll continue voicing our opinions for all of humanity's demise to come. So look forward to that, and have your children look forward to that. So peace out.